Chapter 2194. As a place exclusive to the rich, once night fell, some high-ranking officials, nobles, and descendants of the rich and powerful clans would gather here, indulging in debauchery. Jing-yi Private Clubhouse was the property of the Gu family. Therefore, the Gu family's power was concentrated in this area. In the swimming pool, Gu Jinglian was leaning against the side of the pool with a towel draped over his shoulder. He was holding a glass of dry red wine and sipping it casually. A man in a formal suit suddenly came over and knelt down beside the pool. He lowered his head and whispered in his ear, "Young Master Gu, there's a VIP guest who wants to see you." Gu Jinglian's almond-shaped eyes, which were originally closed for a nap, slowly opened. He glanced at him frivolously. When he heard that name, he suddenly drank the dry red wine in his glass in one gulp, then turned around and walked up the escalator. His well-built and well-defined body was soon exposed to the air. Transparent water droplets slowly slid down his body. That charming and devilish pheromones, no matter how strong a woman's willpower was, at this moment, standing in front of him, she would be mesmerized to the point of suffocation, right? The moment he came out of the pool, someone immediately came forward and carefully took the wine glass from his hand. Then, another person respectfully came forward and draped a graceful and luxurious bathrobe over him. In the private room, Song Yunshi had already finished a whole bottle of red wine. At this moment, he was really annoyed. When he thought about how weak his father was and how he was willing to give a piece of golden land to Muyaja, he was so angry that he drank another glass. Just as he opened the second bottle, the door was suddenly pushed open. He raised his head and saw Gu Jinglian, who walked in like a moon surrounded by stars. He forced a smile on his face and stood up respectfully. In front of this man, even if he was proud and arrogant, he still didn't dare to relax. "Young Master Gu." He chuckled and greeted politely. However, Gu Jinglian acted as if he did not hear her. He walked slowly to the sofa and sat down gracefully. Then, he crossed his legs and looked very noble. After coming out of the swimming hall, he changed his clothes, but his black hair was still a little wet and slightly messy, but it did not diminish his heroic spirit. Song Yunshi was not embarrassed by the arrogance and disdain he had shown from beginning to end. Instead, she smiled more and more flatteringly. To him, a man like Gu Jinglian should be so arrogant and superior. The more one mingled in this circle, the more they paid attention to their status. Since their identities were different, their statuses would naturally be different as well. "Sit down. Don't stand on ceremony," Gu Jinglian said lightly, then beckoned with his finger. Soon, a waiter came up and opened a bottle of Lafite. Song Yunshi silently sized him up. She had to admit that the man in front of her definitely didn't look like a crown prince from the underworld. Gu Jinglian's mother was one of the top 10 beauties in the capital back then, and he had inherited her beauty. His facial features were between genders, and his deep-set facial features were full of heroic spirit. However, his feminine eyes and exquisite nose and lips were definitely something that women could not compare to. Her beauty had nothing to do with gender. It was so beautiful that it was suffocating and breathtaking. Chapter 2195. His eyes, in particular, were captivating. The reason was that his pupils were different from those of ordinary people. His pure amber eyes were like top-grade and beautiful colored glass, flowing with light. He raised his eyelashes and raised his wrist to look at the time, as if secretly setting a time for Song Yunshi in front of him. He had always paid attention to the concept of time. Therefore, no matter who the person was, if they came to talk to him about something, they had to be concise and comprehensive within 30 minutes. Otherwise, he would not have that kind of patience. "Why are you looking for me? Speak." Song Yunshi first rubbed her hands a little uneasily and politely exchanged a few words. Then, she went straight to the point and summarized the matter. "Muyaja, that bastard, is too much. He's going too far. I really can't take this lying down. I can't watch him trample the Song family under his feet, so I want to teach him a lesson." "Oh." Gu Jinglian nodded slightly, curled his lips, and then smiled evilly. "So? You came to me just to complain about these things? In other words, there was some dissatisfaction. Song Yunxi and Gu Jinglian had known each other for a long time, but the relationship between the two of them could only be considered as casual acquaintances at best. Song Yunxi had always wanted to befriend Gu Jinglian, who had a strong background in the underworld. However, no matter how she tried to curry favor with him, it was difficult for her to get too close to him. Gu Jinglian was really too arrogant. He was like a natural aristocrat. The aura in his every move was incomparable. Song Yunxi said, I came to you because I hope that you can help me vent my anger. Young Master Gu, I know that you have some tricks up your sleeve. In front of you, Mu Yaja is just a pitiful worm. Won't he be easily crushed under your feet? Not interested. Gu Jinglian interrupted her with little interest. His expression was cold, and he yawned lazily. Mu Yaja. He had also heard about his resignation as the patriarch. However, he wasn't so bored as to go against a former overlord. The Mu family was an old rival of the Gu family, so they knew each other very well. Song Yunxi was short-sighted and stupid, but Gu Jinglian could see the situation clearly. Although Mu Yaja seemed to be in dire straits now, having lost some of his status and his former glory, it was as if he had fallen from the top of a mountain to the bottom of a valley thousands of meters down, smashed into pieces. Gu Jinglian, who could see the man's ambition clearly, knew that the current situation was only temporary. Before long, this man would once again stand at the peak at the speed of light in an extremely short amount of time. His current abject state was just a cover for others. Mu Yaja was the same as him, an arrogant man to the bone. He would never allow himself to fall from a high position. Even if he abdicated, it was just a means to advance by retreating. Therefore, he wasn't interested in having any entanglements with such an unfathomable man. Moreover, the Gu and Mu families had always minded their own business and didn't have any feud. Even if they had always been against each other, it was just a competition and had nothing to do with gratitude or grudges. To outsiders, Mu Yaja and Gu Jinglian seemed to be enemies and friends. They couldn't see clearly. But in fact, these two men were both at the top of the world, and they seemed to appreciate each other. Chapter 2196. When Song Yunxi heard this, she was puzzled. Not interested? I don't think I have the obligation to help you. Gu Jinglian appeared to be very impatient. After saying this, he stood up and walked towards the door. Song Yunxi immediately stood up and said, Young Master Gu, that's not what I meant. If you're willing to stand up for me, I definitely won't neglect you. You won't be short of remuneration either. As long as you can stand up for me, I definitely won't treat you unfairly. Gu Jinglian suddenly smiled and walked in front of him. He put his hands in his trouser pockets and bent down slightly to face him. He said evilly, What makes you think that I'll provoke an enemy who's as powerful as me for a person whose name I don't even remember? Song Yunxi's eyes widened in surprise. A cold glint flashed across Gu Jinglian's eyes. He reached out his hand and grabbed his chin with his slender fingers. He lifted his chin and sized him up. Song Yunxi's stubborn and unconvinced face looked so childish. Gu Jinglian suddenly tilted his head to the side. A sinister look appeared on his devilishly handsome face as he said, For a man of Mu Yaja's stature, you either don't go against him, or you should be prepared to die together with him. Leave no room for negotiation and get rid of him completely. After a pause, he asked slowly, How much are you going to pay? How much do you want? How much do I want? Gu Jinglian seemed to have heard a funny joke and said coldly, You don't seem to know the rules very well. What do you mean? Gu Jinglian patted his face. It was a humiliating action, arrogant and frivolous. Song Yunxi gritted her teeth because of this humiliating action. However, she heard him say, Mu Yaja is worth hundreds of millions. Can you afford to buy his life? As he spoke, he shook him off, smiled coldly, turned around, and lit a cigarette. Gu Jinglian took a puff of smoke and narrowed his eyes. He said casually, Kid, this complicated world is not as simple as you think. Don't think that just because your father is the mayor, you have the right to come here and make a fool of yourself. Get lost. After that, the waiter draped the black suit over his shoulders, leaving the two empty sleeves beside him as he walked towards the door in a carefree manner. Song Yunshi couldn't stand it anymore. She stood up and shouted at his back, "Stop right there." Even though he had shouted those two words with great vigor, Gu Jinglian seemed to be disdainful of his words and left without a word. He didn't know where his confidence came from, or perhaps it was the bottle of red wine he drank. With the help of the alcohol, he vented all his dissatisfaction and humiliation. "I think you just don't have the guts, right?" He claimed to be the crown prince of the Gu family, but unexpectedly, he was also a coward. He said so much in a dignified manner, but in fact, he didn't dare to play with Mu Yaja. The dignified Gu Jinglian only has this much courage. After venting her anger, she finished. In her anger, Song Yunshi kicked the short table beside her. The wine glass on the table tilted and fell to the ground, shattering into pieces. The waiters in the private room looked at him strangely, or with a hint of fierceness. However, Song Yunshi was drunk. She didn't care whose territory she was in and shouted, "What are you looking at? A bunch of cowards." Ha! Chapter 2197. In the end, when he dragged his tired and drunk body and was about to leave, a group of men in black suddenly rushed into the private room. At this moment, Song Yunshi was so drunk that she was staggering. She glanced at the crowd and shouted unhappily, "What are you looking at? You guys?" The man in the lead smiled majestically and said, "Young Master Song, you haven't paid your bill for tonight." "What bill?" Song Yunshi said angrily, "Didn't I just drink 2 bottles of red wine?" The man signaled with his eyes, and the waiter handed over the bill expressionlessly. Song Yunshi took it and glanced at it. She immediately exploded with anger. 88 million? Yes. Young Master Song, pay the bill before you leave. They were obviously making things difficult for him. This was the Gu family's territory. What he said just now was undoubtedly looking for trouble in their territory. If they heard that someone dared to humiliate their master, they would naturally think of ways to make Song Yunshi uncomfortable. 2 bottles of dry red wine for 8 million, plus the wine glass you broke, 880,000. Young Master Song, pay the bill. Bullsh *T. What kind of wine is so expensive? You're obviously blackmailing me, aren't you? Just pay directly. Don't talk nonsense with us. If you don't pay, we won't be polite. Song Yunshi slammed the table. She was drunk and was not afraid of them at all. She shouted with her tongue out, "Do you know who I am? My father is the head of the *T organization. What can you do to me?" Ha ha ha. When the group of people heard this, they roared with laughter. Song Yunshi was so embarrassed that her face and ears turned red. She thickened her neck and said angrily, "What are you laughing at?" One of them said contemptuously, "Bullsh *T head of the *T organization. Even if the Heavenly King is here, he can't talk about the law. Young Master Song, you're standing on the Gu family's territory. Here, you have to follow our rules. If you don't pay, you can do whatever you want. Then don't blame us for being impolite." As he spoke, the man ordered his subordinates, "Go, this brat dares to go back on his word. Show him some tricks." As soon as he finished speaking, a group of brothers behind him immediately rushed up and surrounded Song Yunshi, punching and kicking her. Song Yunshi was from the June team. After all, she had practiced martial arts. However, she was drunk after all. Her punches were light and without any strength. Soon, she was defeated and beaten to a pulp. 10 minutes later, at the back door of the clubhouse, Song Yunshi was kicked out like a piece of garbage. She fell to the ground with a bloody nose and a swollen face. That man mocks him, "You don't have money and you come to Jing-yi. Idiot." Everyone laughed and closed the door. Song Yunshi staggered to his feet. He touched his nose and felt a sharp pain from a dislocated bone. He lowered his head and saw a pool of blood on his palm. He clenched his teeth and turned around, but he soon fell down again after taking a few shaky steps. That person walked into the meeting room. Gu Jinglian sat in front of the table and flipped through the documents calmly. Then he heard his subordinate report respectfully, "Young Master Gu, the trash has been cleaned up." Gu Jinglian didn't even raise his eyelids and said, "In the future, open your eyes and look carefully. Don't let any dog in." "Yes, I understand." Gu Jinglian suddenly thought of something and asked calmly, "Is she dead?" Chapter 2198. Gu Jinglian closed the document and said coldly, "It's such a cold day. Get a car to send him to the hospital. It's bad luck if he dies here." "Okay. It's Lunar New Year's Eve tomorrow." Mu Yaja was reading in the study when Yun Shishir walked into the study. She rested her head on his shoulder and smiled happily. Her eyes were sparkling and she looked very excited. After Yu Yu's reminder, she checked the calendar and confirmed that it would be Lunar New Year's Eve tomorrow night. She was overjoyed. After all, this was the first time she and Mu Yaja spent New Year's Eve together. She was looking forward to it. Mu Yaja, however, remained unmoved and continued flipping through his book. His emotions appeared to be calm as he hummed in acknowledgement. "Oh." Yun Shishir was unhappy with his cold attitude. She pushed his book away and forced him to look at her. She said seriously, "It's going to be Lunar New Year soon. Don't you look forward to it?" "Look forward to what?" Yun Shishir was a little unhappy. "You don't seem to be looking forward to the Lunar New Year?" Mu Yaja was stunned for a moment before he smiled faintly. "I've never celebrated the Lunar New Year before, so I feel that it's no different from other days." "How is that possible?" "There are many things to celebrate the Lunar New Year. For example, today is the night before the Lunar New Year's Eve. You're not allowed to be busy. Let's prepare for Lunar New Year's Eve together." Before Lunar New Year's Eve, Yun Shishir started to get busy. First, she had to clean the house. Even though she, Yu Yu, and Xiao Yichen had already cleaned the house, that was because they were not allowed to clean the house during the 3 days of the Lunar New Year. They did not want to lose their fortune. Hence, they had to clean the house and courtyard early in the morning on Lunar New Year's Eve to bid farewell to the old and welcome the new. Yun Shishir had already bought the fireworks and firecrackers in advance. Every New Year, they would set off firecrackers early in the morning and fireworks at night. This was an unshakable activity. In the living room, Yu Yu had already prepared a brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. When Mu Yaja came to the living room, Yun Shishir was already sitting in front of the table with a brush in hand. She was thinking hard about how to write a few couplets. Xiao Yichen leaned on the side and muttered, "Mommy, is your calligraphy readable?" Yu Yu said affirmatively, "Of course. Mommy's calligraphy skills are unquestionable." Yun Shishir said proudly, "Mommy has been practicing calligraphy since I was in university. You can say that I've made some progress in my studies." Mu Yaja came to her side and looked at the 2 Red Spring Festival couplets. At this moment, they had not written anything yet, so he asked, "What couplets do you plan to write?" Yun Shishir's mind was blank, and she didn't know what to write. Yu Yu suddenly said, "Let's put up a sticker on the front door that reads, 'Heaven increases the years, people live longer, and when spring comes, families are blessed.'" He then took out 2 portraits of door gods, Yuqi Jingda and Qin Xiong. "I've prepared the portraits too." Xiao Yichen took a look and his lips twitched. "What's this?" "Door gods." "Door gods?" Yu Yu said, "Yuqi Jingda and Qin Xiong." Xiao Yichen was puzzled and asked, "Why do you want to put up these 2 guys?" Chapter 2199. "Then I can do it too." Xiao Yichen flexed his muscles. "Draw a picture of me and paste it on the door. I want to be a door god too." "You?" Yu Yu snorted and said disdainfully, "With your skinny arms and legs, you still want to be a door god?" Yuqi Jingda and Qin Xiong are marshals under Li Shimin. The reason for this custom is that after Li Shimin ascended the throne, he couldn't sleep at night because he killed countless people and often had nightmares. Therefore, the officials suggested that Yuqi Jingda and Qin Xiong should stand guard at the door so that they could sleep well at night. Later, the palace sent an artist to draw these two people and paste it on the door. You. Are you an encyclopedia? You know so much. You said disdainfully, do you think I'm like you? Simple-minded. While the two little guys were bickering, Yunshusher finished writing the couplet and showed it to them. It's done. Muyaja glanced at it and was slightly surprised. The handwriting was clear and elegant. It was indeed beautiful calligraphy. Mu Yichen was so shocked that his mouth opened wide. He said in a daze, Mommy. The handwriting is not bad. Yunshusher was suddenly at a loss. What should we paste on the bedroom? Let's write birds flying happily in the sky and the earth tied together in a knot. Yu said again. Yunshusher and Muyaja looked at each other and lowered their heads in shame. Their educational level was worse than a child's, shame. After writing the couplet, they wanted to paste it on New Year's Eve. Yu brought a stack of red paper and 2 pairs of scissors and said that he wanted to cut the window flowers. When Muyaja saw this, his curiosity was piqued and he excitedly asked Yu to teach him. Yu had been good at handicrafts since he was young. During the Lunar New Year, he cut the window decorations himself. They were as good as the ones bought outside. Muyaja was also interested. He looked at the two little guys' scissors and felt that it was a bit interesting. He took a piece of red paper and fiddled with it for a long time. Finally, he unfolded it, only to find that the cut was a mess. Yunshusher, who was standing at the side, could not help bursting into laughter. Yu also saw her father's terrible handiwork skills. She covered her mouth and snickered. Even Mu Yichen laughed mercilessly. Daddy is so stupid. Muyaja glared at him in dissatisfaction. He snorted and said confidently, that's because no one taught me. Let me do it. Yu abandoned Mu Yichen and sat on Muyaja's lap, personally teaching him. Paper cutting was really amazing. She watched as the boy folded and cut a piece of red paper in his hand. From time to time, he would carefully make a few strokes with a knife. Finally, when the paper was unfolded, the word Fu appeared neatly on the paper. It looked very proper. Muyaja also learned seriously. In the end, under Yu's guidance, he also learned the basics of paper cutting. At least it was pleasing to the eye. Yu nodded and commented, you've made some progress. She pasted the window decorations on the glass, the door, and the wall. The festive atmosphere of the Lunar New Year was immediately brought out. Muyaja hugged Mu Yichen and looked at the clear glass. The red window decorations made him smile. So, the Lunar New Year felt so warm. Chapter 2200. However, it turned out that spending the New Year with family was such a warm and blissful experience. Actually, the New Year was not on the streets. The true New Year was at home and in one's heart. The true meaning of the New Year was only when one's family was together. Muyaja suddenly understood why all the employees in the company could not wait to return home at the end of the year. Dishing Financial Group's usual practice was to finish all the work on hand and then have an early holiday. Therefore, half a month before the New Year, all the employees worked hard to catch up with their workload so that they could spend more time with their families on such meaningful days. Muyaja personally pasted the last piece of paper on the window of the study and picked up Xiao Yichen. The father and son looked at each other and smiled warmly. Daddy! Daddy! Yu ran over with 2 big red lanterns in his hands. He beamed and said, Daddy, come and do me a favor. What favor? Muyaja put down Xiao Yichen and walked over. Yu grabbed his hand and hurried toward the door. It turned out that Yu wanted to hang 2 red lanterns at the door. After all, it would look more festive. However, he was short. Even if Yunshusher lifted him up high, it was still difficult for him to do so. There was no ladder at home, so he went to Muyaja eagerly. At 188 meters, Muyaja lifted Yu up easily and hooked him. After Yu hung the lanterns, the festive atmosphere was immediately apparent. As it was nearing New Year's Eve, Yunshusher drove to the supermarket and decided to buy the vegetables and meat for the New Year's Eve dinner in advance. She also prepared some dumpling wrappers to make dumplings. It was New Year's Eve, after all. It was a custom for everyone to sit together, make dumplings, and eat dumplings together. After buying the groceries, Yun Shishir suddenly thought of something and suggested, "Let's invite Shao Jia to join us for the New Year's Eve dinner. It's just an extra pair of chopsticks with more people. It'll be livelier." Okay. Yu Yu agreed and was quite interested. Mu Yaja did not have any objections. It was his first time celebrating the new year with his family, so he felt that it would be livelier with more people around. Thus, Yun Shishir called Gong Jia. When the call went through, she happily invited him, "Shao Jia, tomorrow is New Year's Eve. Let's have New Year's Eve dinner together." After a while, Gong Jia then asked a question, "New Year's Eve? What does that mean?" Yun Shishir Yu she had suddenly forgotten that when she and little Jia were still young, they did not have a proper New Year's celebration. She vaguely remembered that her mother was short of money at that time. On New Year's Eve, having meat and fish was already considered a good New Year's celebration. When his mother was not around, little Jia should have grown up overseas and could be considered half a foreigner. Therefore, he was not very familiar with the customs and terms of the Spring Festival. Hence, she explained seriously, "It's New Year's Eve. Tomorrow night is New Year's Eve, so let's have a reunion dinner together. The more the merrier. After the reunion dinner, we're going to the riverside to set off fireworks to welcome the new year. Are you coming?" She had already purchased the fireworks. Chapter 2201. Some fireworks cost a few dozen yuan each, while some cost a few hundred yuan for just 1 second. These were things that she would never have dared to think about in the past. In recent years, the capital had implemented a standard of strictly prohibiting fireworks in the city. However, on New Year's Eve, many people still went to the riverside to set off fireworks. Firstly, it was for the festive atmosphere. Secondly, setting off fireworks was suitable for all ages. It was also one of the children's favorite activities. Without it, it would inevitably be lacking in flavor. Setting off fireworks was an ancient tradition passed down by the ancestors. It would be a pity to lose it. Gong Jia readily agreed, "Sure." Yun Shishir said, "Then it's settled. Be there at 6 p.m. sharp. You're not allowed to be late. Otherwise, you'll have to drink as punishment." Okay. Yu knew that Yun Shishir was calling Gong Jia. She suddenly leaned over to the phone and said loudly, "Uncle, remember to give red packets to Xiao Yichen and me." On the other end, Gong Jia laughed and said, "Little Tycoon, are you really interested in my red packets? It's the thought that counts. As for how much I'm going to give, it all depends on my performance." Yu was a cunning person. Thus, she managed to get Gong Jia to agree with her with just a few words. Gong Jia cleared his throat and said, "Just be good and wait for me to give you your red packets." After hanging up the phone, Yun Shishir felt extremely happy. It was as if she was sitting on a hydrogen balloon and was slowly floating up into the clouds. She accidentally found Hua Jin's number. She was stunned for a moment and frowned. Then, she hesitated for a moment and dialed the number with a hint of anticipation. At City Condominium. Hua Jin was wearing a bathrobe and leaning against the bay window, looking at the beautiful sunset. Suddenly, his phone rang. He picked it up immediately and heard Yun Shishir's gentle and careful voice on the other end. "Hua Jin, it's New Year's Eve tomorrow. Would you like to come to my house for New Year's Eve dinner?" Hua Jin couldn't react in time. He choked on a mouthful of smoke and coughed for a long time. Yun Shishir could not help but raise her eyebrows when she heard the heart-wrenching coughing coming from the phone. She was a little surprised. What's wrong? The reason why she thought of Hua Jin was because she was concerned that his family was not by his side. Wouldn't he be very lonely if he thought too much? Therefore, she wanted to invite him to her house to spend time together. Hua Jin stared blankly for a while before he suddenly laughed. "Why would you think of me?" "Because it's New Year. If you spend it alone, won't it be very lonely? After all, it's New Year's Eve. The more the merrier." Yun Shishir said. She paused and suddenly asked in disappointment, "What's wrong? Are you unwilling? Or do you have an appointment?" "No. No." Hua Jin immediately said, "It's just that I'm very surprised. I didn't expect you to invite me to welcome the new year together." "That's because you're my family too," Yun Shishir said matter-of-factly. Hua Jin's expression froze. Instantly, a gentle smile formed on his lips. A warmth from the sky enveloped him. He was extremely touched by the simple word, family. He said gently, "Okay. Okay, then you must come tomorrow night. Set your bowl and chopsticks. After the New Year's Eve dinner, let's go to the riverside to set off fireworks, okay?" "Okay." After hanging up the phone, Hua Jin looked at the screen that indicated the end of the call. However, he could not stop smiling. His heart felt extremely warm. Chapter 2202. In such a bustling city, on such a cold winter day, he actually felt that he was no longer alone. It was great to be able to celebrate the new year with everyone. When Song Jinghua received the call from the hospital, he was inevitably shocked. When he rushed to the hospital with Jiang Qimeng, he saw Song Yinshi lying in the intensive care unit. His face was bruised and swollen, and his legs and arms were broken in several places. It was almost New Year's Eve, and he was actually lying in the hospital on New Year's Eve. He instantly felt that he had hit the jackpot. This kid was still fine yesterday, but he went out in the middle of the night. When he turned around, he received a notice from the hospital saying that he was lying in the hospital. When he rushed over, he saw that he was badly injured. It was obvious that he had been beaten up like this by someone. Jiang Qimeng felt as if a knife was being twisted in her heart. She threw herself at the bedside and cried, "Yunshi." Yunshi, however, after calling for a long time, Song Yunshi did not have the strength to respond. He was still in a semi-conscious state. His mind was muddled, and his jaw had been dislocated. He could not open his mouth or speak at all. Jiang Qimeng gritted her teeth and cursed, "Which bastard did this to our child? It's New Year's Eve. How unlucky." Song Jinghua stood by the bed and frowned as he sized up the child. He was so angry that he could not speak. Where did this kid go last night? It's obvious that he was beaten up by someone. Where the hell did he go? Tears streamed down Jiang Qimeng's face and she couldn't say a word. Song Jinghua suddenly felt frustrated. He slammed the bedside table and scolded, "Cry. Cry. You only know how to cry." She only knew how to shed tears whenever something happened to her. What else can you do other than cry? How can my heart not ache when my child is beaten up to this state? Jiang Qimeng retorted aggrievedly. "I don't know where he went last night. If you didn't receive the call from the hospital, I would have thought that he went to fool around again. You can't take good care of your daughter, and you can't discipline your son well. As a mother, can't you be more careful?" Before Jiang Qimeng could defend herself, a row of medical staff suddenly walked in from the door. When the head doctor saw Song Jinghua, he said politely, "Mr. Song. Nice to meet you." The doctor chatted with Song Jinghua for a while, then invited him to the office to analyze Song Yinshi's injury. Half an hour later, Song Yinshi finally walked in with a gloomy face. However, Song Yinshi was still unconscious and was sitting at the side angrily. Jiang Qimeng immediately walked over and asked worriedly, "Jinghua, what did the doctor say?" This kid was seriously injured by someone. In addition to the fractures of his ribs, knees, tendons, shoulders, intracranial hemorrhage, and moderate concussion, the doctor said that such injuries were definitely not caused by one person. It was as if he had been ganged up on by a group of people. He wouldn't be able to recover in a short time. Even after the surgery, there will still be some residual effects. For this child, once there are some injuries, it means that he will have to retire early. Retired? Jiang Qimeng widened her eyes in shock. Why? Chapter 2203. However, if he were to retire now, it would mean that all the meritorious service he had accumulated over the years would be gone. Song Jinghua appeared calm on the surface, but deep down, he was already heartbroken and depressed. He had worked so hard and paid such a high price, all for the sake of planning a good future for this brat while he still had some power. But now, look at what had happened. He had lost everything. After he retired and returned home from the BU team, it would be difficult to say that he would have a meteoric rise. This lad's great future had been ruined by him just like that. The most hateful thing was that Song Yunshi was still unconscious. Even if Song Jingguo wanted to ferociously find the culprit who had beaten his son to such a state, there was no way to find out. Song Jingguo was extremely vexed and frustrated. Be it Song Enya or Song Yunshi, they were constantly causing trouble for him. Song Enya was one thing. She was used to being pampered and noble. Because of her difficult temper, she had provoked Muyaja. However, before this matter could be resolved, Song Yunshi was in trouble again. Song Jingguo was really annoyed. Why were there so many troublesome matters? Just which deity had he offended? Everything had gone wrong this year. It seemed that he was destined to spend this new year in the hospital. At the thought of this, Song Jingguo smoked 2 cigarettes in a row. Then, he stood up and ran to settle some work matters. Jiang Qimeng stayed by the bed and held Song Yunshi's cold hands with heartache. She could only cry non-stop as if this was the only way to vent some of the depression in her heart. Early in the morning of New Year's Eve, Yun Shusher got out of bed. As the grandest lunch of the year, the reunion dinner on New Year's Eve was indispensable. The family had to be complete, and the dishes had to be sumptuous. No matter where they worked, they had to return home covered in dust and sit at the table to have a reunion dinner and share the joy of family. There were also many things to pay attention to at the reunion dinner. The must-have dish for lunch was fish, which meant that there was more than enough every year. There had to be chicken, which meant good luck, tofu and cabbage, which meant happiness and wealth, fans, which meant longevity and good luck. Yu even prepared canned peaches, which meant escape from disaster and health. Yun Shusher was surprised. Even she had not thought of this. Lastly, there was good wine, which meant that life was everlasting and good. Early in the morning, Yun Shusher and Yu were busy in the kitchen. In the afternoon, Yun Yecheng and Yun Yeho arrived. Yun, of course, she had not wanted to invite her mother and daughter to invite to the New Year's Eve dinner. However, she didn't want to invite them. The mother and daughter trio were all top-notch. If she invited them, it would be hard to avoid making things unpleasant again. She didn't want to bring bad luck to the family during the new year. But when he thought about it, he felt rather embarrassed. Speaking of which, one was her aunt, and the other was her elder sister. If she forgot about them just like that, it would be hard to avoid being heartless. Yun Shusher was caught in a dilemma and felt very conflicted. In fact, before this, Xiang Yu had called Yun Yecheng and told him that the family would have a meal together on New Year's Eve. Chapter 2204. Thus, she said, "It's New Year's Eve. My brother and I will just eat at home. There's no need for us to gather for a meal." His wife was displeased to hear that. "What's wrong? Do you think we're embarrassing you and embarrassing you? Now that your family is rich, you have a capable daughter, and you have a rich son-in-law, so you don't want to acknowledge us as your poor relatives anymore, do you? So what if we're poor? We're family, after all, and we're not greedy for anything. Why don't you give us the honor of having a meal together on New Year's Eve?" What was the truth? In the past 2 months, the money she had brought over from her hometown had long been used up. Before they came to the capital, Xiang Yu and Yun Qingmiao still had a lot of yearning and anticipation for the glamorous life in the city. However, once they rented a house in the capital and started living there, the pressure came crashing down on them like a mountain, to the point where they could barely breathe. With the high rent, daily expenses, and living expenses in the capital, it was already extremely difficult for them to make ends meet. Yun Qinli and Yun Qingmiao also found part-time jobs, but since they had just moved to the capital, they were unfamiliar with everything. Not to mention earning money, each of them only had a monthly salary of more than 3,000 yuan, which added up to more than 6,000 yuan. After deducting the food and transportation expenses, as well as the occasional shopping trip, they were out of money. His wife, on the other hand, was thick-skinned. She had approached him several times, saying that she was out of money and wanted to borrow some. He knew very well that the money would be wasted once he lent it out. Still, he was worried that if he did not lend them the money, the mother-daughter trio would surely cause a lot of trouble for Yunshusher. Thus, he secretly lent them a few sums of money behind his back, but the moment his wife tasted the sweetness, her greed kicked in and she could not take it back. When it came to New Year's Eve, Xiangyu put on a dignified front by saying that she wanted to have a reunion dinner with her family, but in reality, she would probably beat around the bush or shamelessly ask Yunshusher for money during the meal. He did not want to make things so awkward, so he asked directly, "Did you guys run out of money again?" His wife flew into a rage out of humiliation when she heard that. "What? Brother, are you treating the three of us like beggars? All you talk about is money, money, money. Do you really think we're begging for food?" After all, they were a family. What was wrong with celebrating the New Year together? Do you hate us so much that you don't even want to have a reunion dinner with us? Her overbearing words put Yun Yecheng in a difficult position. Unable to bear it any longer, Yun Yeho rebuked, "Don't you always talk about borrowing money? Do you really think I don't know that you borrowed money from Yecheng behind my back? This money adds up to tens of thousands of yuan. Have you paid it back?" Xiangyu had been in the capital for a few months, and she hadn't learned anything else. However, her skin had grown thicker, and she grinned, "Isn't it because I'm short of money? Besides, we're all family. Is there a need to be so calculative?" Yun Yeho, on the other hand, did not take it to heart. As the saying goes, even blood-related brothers should settle their accounts clearly. Yi Cheng has already spent a lot of energy taking care of me. Do you think he's made of iron? That's right. You don't need money to support the three of you. Chapter 2205. In a single sentence, the greed in his heart was as clear as day. Yun Yeho was so exasperated that he almost burst into tears. He almost blurted out, "All of you, scram back to your hometown. If you don't have the capability, why are you all here in the capital?" Yun Yecheng immediately stopped him, saying that they should not quarrel during the New Year. After all, they were a family. Hence, he pulled Yunshusher to the side and said, "Shusher, I have a presumptuous request. Since it's New Year's Eve today, please invite your aunts over for a reunion dinner at noon. I don't want to make things difficult for you, but they seem to be clinging on to you and insist on having a family reunion dinner. Most importantly, I don't want to make things difficult for your uncle, so please invite them over for lunch to shut their mouths and prevent them from gossiping about you behind your back. After lunch, I'll send them back in a taxi." Yunshusher readily agreed. Lunch was supposed to be a family reunion, so it was not a demanding thing to invite them over for a meal. However, when Xiangyu and her daughter came, the festive atmosphere was diluted by a lot. Logically speaking, no matter how close a relative was, they should not come empty-handed. A carton of milk, a tin of biscuits, or even a small toy to coax the child should at least show their sincerity. Although Yunshusher did not care about their etiquette, she could tell from their actions that they were sincere. But when Xiangyu came to the door, not only did she come empty-handed, she didn't even bother to change her shoes as she barged straight into the house. "Wow! Shusher, where's your big villa? It's so grand. I saw it the moment I entered the house. Only the rich live here, right?" Xiangyu and her daughter had taken a taxi over, but they did not even have the time to pay for it. It was Yun Yecheng who rushed over to pay for it after receiving a call. As soon as they entered the villa area, Xiangyu was shocked by the rows of elegant villas. They actually knew that Mu Yaja's net worth was not low, and his living conditions were superior. However, when they saw him living in such an expensive villa, the greed and passion in their eyes could not be concealed. Yun Qingmiao and Yun Qinli stepped through the door. Knowing basic etiquette, they exchanged a few greetings and New Year's blessings, changed their shoes, and were instantly captivated by the luxurious decor before them. "Big sister Shusher, can we take a look at your villa?" Yun Qinli asked excitedly. Before Yun Shusher could nod in agreement, Yun Qingmiao grabbed Yun Qinli's hand and eagerly rushed to each room for a look. They grew up in the countryside and were used to living in houses made of mud and bricks. When they came to Beijing, they lived in rented houses that were dozens of square meters. They had only seen such luxurious villas on TV. Therefore, once he saw it with his own eyes, that kind of shock and yearning was indescribable. Fortunately, Yun Shishir had the foresight to lock the master bedroom and the two little guys' bedroom. Chapter 2206. Yun Qingmiao was so jealous that her eyes were almost red. Just as Yun Shishir walked over, the two sisters walked out in envy and asked, "Shishir, are all those beautiful clothes in such a big walk-in closet yours?" "Yes." Yun Shishir nodded, and Yun Qingli said enviously, "I'm so envious. There are so many clothes. If you change into one every day, it'll be enough for you to wear for a whole year." "You're exaggerating." Yun Qingmiao snorted and then said flatteringly, "Shishir is rich. Even if you buy one every day, you can wear different clothes every day." Yun Shishir's lips twitched. Her sister's compliment made her feel awkward. Many of the clothes were sent by sponsors. She had signed a contract with Louis Vuitton some time ago, so whenever Louis Vuitton released new designs, they would send her a few styles. There was a clause in the contract that stated that she had to wear the brand's clothes whenever she attended important events. In other words, many girls yearned to wear Louis Vuitton's clothes every day, but what about her? She clearly did not like it, but she was still forced to wear it when she went out. She could not voice her bitterness. She could not say it, though, or else the two sisters would say a few more words of jealousy. "You don't know how lucky you are." Just as Yun Shishir closed the walk-in closet door, she saw Yun Qingmiao and Yun Qinli running upstairs, hand in hand. The villa was already renovated when it was handed over. Although she did not go upstairs often, it was already renovated. There was also a sky garden, which she often took care of. Soon, she could hear the exclamations of Yun Qingmiao and Yun Qinli from downstairs. "These flowers are so beautiful. It's good to live in a villa. It must cost a lot to buy such a spacious place, right? Tens of millions, of course. In a place like the capital, every inch of land is worth gold, and a villa is unreasonably expensive." Sigh. "That's why it's important to marry a good man. If Shishir didn't marry such a rich brother-in-law, would she be able to live in such a luxurious villa?" "That's right. For people like us, if we want to live in such a villa, I'm afraid we won't be able to earn so much money even if we spend our entire lives." Yun Shishir stood downstairs, holding her forehead in pain. Why did she feel uncomfortable listening to these words that sounded like compliments? Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen did not seem to be in high spirits either. Yun Shishir felt even more guilty when she saw the unhappy expressions on the two little guys' faces. Mu Yaja heard the noise and walked out of the study. As soon as he walked out, he bumped into Xiang Yu, who was visiting the villa. He was stunned for a moment. "Auntie, Xiao Mu." Xiang Yu was the first to speak. "You look especially spirited in this dress today." Mu Yaja curled his lips into a lukewarm smile. His attitude was frigid as he turned to leave, ignoring him. Xiang Yu was rebuffed, her hot face stuck to a cold butt. She was embarrassed for a moment. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen suddenly looked at each other and smiled slyly. They tacitly squeezed in front of Xiang Yu and cupped their fists together. "Granny. Happy New Year. May you prosper. Give us the red packets." They were here to ask for red packets from her. Xiang Yu's face turned green as she smiled awkwardly. If an adult were to say this, it would inevitably sound petty, but when it came from the mouths of two children, it felt more like a child's babble. Instead, she found it amusing and adorable. Naturally, she had to be generous when children asked for red packets. Chapter 2207. Besides, Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen kept saying, "Happy New Year, Fat Fortune." How could she bear to reject them when they were so sweet-mouthed? Even if it was just for luck, she had to generously give them red packets. Xiang Yu, on the other hand, was stunned for a moment before her lips twitched uneasily. Who would have thought that these two children would ask for red packets in front of everyone? She originally thought that Yun Shusher and Xiao Yichen would not take the initiative to ask for red packets since they were young. Hence, she thought that she would just brush them off if she could. After all, she was already struggling to make ends meet recently. If not for the fact that she was really in a tight spot, why would she shamelessly come here to freeload on the reunion dinner? She had even shamelessly asked Yun Yecheng to pay for her taxi fare. Were these two children deliberately making a fool of themselves by asking her for red packets at this time? She was at a loss as to what to do. Yu Yu's face fell when he saw her standing there in a daze, unable to get a red packet out of her. He could not help feeling a little disappointed. Don't tell me that Grandma didn't prepare red packets for Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen? How stingy. Xiao Yichen covered his mouth and chuckled before saying in disdain, Grandma, don't tell me that you can't even give us a few hundred yuan as red packets. It's New Year's Eve tonight. Not only did you come empty-handed, but you didn't even prepare red packets. Don't tell me you came here to freeload? The two little fellows echoed each other, and Xiang Yu's face was completely stripped bare. If it were Yun Shusher who said such words, it would inevitably come off as harsh, unreasonable, and even mean. However, when it was these two little lads who said it, it made people laugh. While they laughed at the children's nonsense, they did not think that these two children were being rude. After all, Xiang Yu's every word and action were just like what these two little lads had said. It was obvious that they were here to freeload on the reunion dinner. She didn't even prepare a red packet for the child. It was inevitable that the child would despise her. Xiang Yu immediately squatted down in front of the two children and said awkwardly, It's not that I didn't prepare anything. I didn't bring any red packets with me. There was a traffic jam on the road. They came too hastily and were not prepared. It's all your fault. Don't blame me. Tomorrow, I'll prepare it for you, okay? So you didn't bring any red packets. Grandma, wait a moment. With a mischievous grin, he ran to the living room and pulled open a drawer to retrieve a stack of brand new red envelopes he had just bought from the supermarket. Taking out 2 envelopes, he ran to his mother and passed them to her. Here. Mu Yaja sat at the side, trying hard not to laugh. How could he not understand this little fellow's intentions? It was obvious that he didn't like Xiang Yu and her 2 daughters and wanted to embarrass them. He didn't give them a way out at all. How could you lack red packet money? But he just couldn't stand these 3 ungrateful wretches. Xiang Yu looked awkwardly at the red packets that Yu Yu handed to her. She took them resentfully but didn't do anything else for a long time. What kind of joke was this? She only had $100 with her. Was she supposed to tear the $100 in half and give half to each child? This child looked so cute and innocent. How could he be so smart? Chapter 2208. She was so embarrassed that she wanted to cry. Xiao Yichen suddenly said coldly, Yu Yu, forget it. It's obvious that Granny didn't prepare anything. She's so poor that she can't even fork out 200 yuan. Xiang Yu's face turned red, as if blood was about to drip out of her mouth. Yu Yu furrowed her brows in dissatisfaction. Granny doesn't care about us at all. She didn't even prepare a red packet for us. How sad. Yun Yecheng and Yun Yeho looked at each other, feeling like crying and laughing at the same time. As for Yun Yeho, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. At the same time, he felt extremely ashamed of his wife. He could not bear to see his wife being laughed at by the 2 children, so he quickly said, Yu Yu, Xiao Yichen, Grandpa has prepared red packets for you too. Come. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen held hands as they walked to Yun Yeho. They saw him sitting in his wheelchair and taking out 2 thick red packets from his canvas bag. He had secretly packed them beforehand. Ever since he came to the capital, his hometown would regularly send him subsidies despite his physical disability. Plus, he could not stay idle. When Yun Yecheng went to work, he would do some handicrafts at home or do some simple chores. Thus, he managed to save up a small sum of money. The 2 red packets did not look thick, but they were a token of his sincerity. It was the new year, after all. Red packets should be given for the festive occasion. When Yun Yecheng saw this, he immediately stopped him. Yeho, forget it. You don't have much money on you. Save it to buy something for yourself. It's enough that the two children know your sincerity. Oh, dear. Brother, it's the new year. Giving red packets to the children is more or less for the sake of happiness. It won't save much money. Yun Yeho insisted on giving them a red packet. He pulled Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen over and stuffed them into each of their hands with a smile. Yu Yu glanced at Yun Yeho's rough fingers, some of which were still wrapped in bandages. She didn't even need to think about how Yun Yeho had earned all this money. Xiao Yichen was a little embarrassed to accept it, but Yu Yu smiled and said, "Thank you, Grandpa. I wish Grandpa good health and a happy new year." As he spoke, he naturally stuffed it into his trouser pocket. When Xiao Yichen saw that Yu Yu had accepted it, he accepted it as well. He smiled and gave his New Year's greetings. Since Yun Yeho was the first to give a red packet, Yun Yecheng naturally could not be left behind. He also gave the two kids a big red packet each. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen rushed to say their New Year's greetings and received the red packets. Xiao Yichen was the most adorable of them all. He even opened his father's red packet and stole a peek inside. Yu Yu leaned over to take a peek. Xiao Yichen immediately covered his mouth and asked warily, "What are you doing?" "Take a look. It's not like I'm snatching it from you, petty fellow." Xiao Yichen smiled slyly and reached out to snatch his red packet. "Let me see yours first." "No way." The two kids were in a mess. Yun Yecheng and Yun Yeho burst into laughter and immediately said in unison, "You two little fools, we gave you the same amount of red packets." The atmosphere gradually warmed up. The awkwardness was finally resolved. However, after this display of strength, Xiang Yu finally restrained herself. She sat at the table and pretended that nothing had happened while munching on sunflower seeds. She finally knew her place. Yu Yu could not stay idle for a while longer. He ran into the kitchen and prepared the reunion dinner with Yun Shishir. Chapter 2209. The doorbell rang all of a sudden. Yun Yecheng immediately stood up and was about to open the door when Mu Yaja pressed on his shoulder. "Dad, take a seat, I'll open the door." "Oh, okay." Feeling flattered, Yun Yecheng smiled and sat down obediently as he was told. Mu Yaja walked to the entryway and opened the door, only to see Gong Jia standing outside. "Brother-in-law?" Gong Jia was a little surprised to see him opening the door. He raised a brow and greeted him naturally. Mu Yaja hummed in acknowledgement. Surprisingly, Gong Jia did not wear his trademark white windbreaker today. Instead, he wore a red shirt inside and a black coat outside. The coat was very long and went past his knees. Paired with a pair of straight, black slim-fit pants and a pair of black boots, he looked high-spirited, slender, and domineering. She didn't know if it was because it was a festive day, but his dark red shirt complemented his fair skin and deep eyes, making him look especially charming and cold. Few men could pull off a red shirt. With his hands in the pockets of his coat, he stepped in and scanned the living room. Although he was not familiar with the people sitting there, he still smiled. "Happy New Year. This is Shishir's younger brother, right?" Yun Yecheng smiled. He had seen this young man once at Shishir's engagement party. As he looked too similar to Yun Shishir, he had a deep impression of him. When Gong Jia saw him, he greeted him with a standard British gentleman's etiquette and smiled. "Hello. Uncle, hello. Hello, hello. Come, have a seat." Yun Yecheng greeted him. "The reunion dinner isn't ready yet. Have some melon seeds and peanuts first." When Xiao Yichen saw Gong Jia, he immediately went up to him like a happy little bird. He jumped around him and chirped, "Uncle, Happy New Year. May you be prosperous. In other words, give me the red packet." Gong Jia was stunned for a moment. Then, he slapped his forehead heavily and lowered his head guiltily. He said in a remorseful tone, "Xiao Bao, Uncle forgot to prepare the New Year's money. What should I do?" Boom! Xiao Yichen's face crumbled as if the sky and earth had split open. He pursed his lips, looking very unhappy. What he was looking forward to the most today was Gong Jie's red packet. Last night, Yu had secretly told him that Gong Jie was a super-rich man. He was filthy rich and had a net worth of hundreds of millions. During the New Year last year, Gong Jie had sent Yu a red packet. The way he sent the red packet was simple and crude. This guy had directly transferred $10 million to Yu's account. Yu was taken aback at that time. 10 million, and in pounds? This was even better than winning the lottery. Xiao Yichen's eyes widened. Oh, God. He had never seen such a sizable red packet before. The biggest red packet he had received during the New Year was from Muyaja. A few million was already an astronomical figure. Therefore, Xiao Yichen had been looking forward to Gong Jie's red packet. He had even prepared his bank account for it. In the end, Gong Jie told him that he had not prepared his New Year's money. Mu Yichen's face darkened at once. Uncle is so stingy. Chapter 22:10. Gong Jie could not help but laugh as he carried the boy from behind and placed him on his lap. Mu Yichen, however, did not want to bother with him. Crossing his arms, he turned his face away in a huff, refusing to look at him. Gong Jie deliberately teased him by kissing his rosy cheeks. Seeing that Mu Yichen was not in a good mood and did not want to bother with him, he carefully squeezed his little hand and frowned slightly. Xiao Yichen, are you angry? Uncle, you're so petty. Why should I bother with you when you didn't even prepare a red packet? Xiao Yichen grumbled matter-of-factly. Coincidentally, Yun Xingmiao and Yun Qinli were coming down from upstairs. The two of them toured the villa, chatting as they went downstairs. However, just as they reached the living room, they saw Gong Jie sitting at the table with Xiao Yichen in his arms. Their faces turned cold as if a basin of ice water had been poured over them. Yun Xingmiao, in particular, looked extremely ugly. Her memory of this man was still fresh in her mind. During Yun Shishir's engagement ceremony, she had wanted to get close to Gong Jie to inquire about his identity, but all she did was lightly touch his sleeve and this man mercilessly splashed wine all over her. This had practically become a shadow in her heart. The moment she saw this man, she shrunk her shoulders in fear and did not dare to go to the table. Instead, she hid in the living room like a coward. Yun Qinli, on the other hand, was natural and unrestrained as she went to the table and sat down beside her mother. Mom, shut up. Be quiet and don't talk nonsense. Her mother immediately warned her. Yun Qinli was naturally obedient. She obediently shut her mouth and didn't say anything more. On the other end, Gong Jie was still trying his best to coax Xiao Yichen, but Xiao Yichen seemed to be deliberately arguing with him and ignored him. Gong Jie was at his wit's end and could only take out a small and exquisite gift box from his pocket. He did not prepare a red packet because he felt that it was tacky. He had carefully prepared gifts for each of them. She had originally planned to give them the gifts after midnight on New Year's Eve. However, seeing Xiao Yichen's sullen face, she had no choice but to coax him. Little Yichen was sulking when he suddenly felt the man behind him raise his head and move his hand. The next moment, the man opened his palm in front of him, revealing an exquisite and small gift box. Yes. It's a New Year's gift for you. He coaxed gently. Little Yichen raised an eyebrow in surprise. He was clearly surprised. New Year's gift? Red packets are so tacky. The man's lips curled into a smile. I've prepared it for you. I think you'll like it. Xiao Yichen's eyes lit up slightly. He took it curiously and couldn't wait to open it. However, from the corner of his eyes, he caught a glimpse of Gong Jie's playful gaze. Then, he cleared his throat and pretended to be reserved. What gift is this? Open it and take a look yourself. You'll know. Xiao Yichen nodded and gently opened the gift box. Under everyone's gaze, Xiao Yichen took out a gorgeous key from the gift box. The key ring had a retro design and was carved with the texture of a luxurious yacht. It was especially exquisite and delicate, and one could tell at a glance that it was handmade. The design of the key was also very unique. It was designed to look down on the yacht. On the back of the key was a string of words in English, the star. It was especially shiny. Chapter 22:11. In particular, there was a 1-carat diamond inlaid in the center of the tail, which was dazzling and mesmerizing under the light. Putting everything else aside, the rare diamond inlaid in the key alone was priceless. Yun Qinli and Xiang Yu were immediately dazzled by the diamond on the key. They didn't know what kind of key it was, but the dazzling diamonds on the key were an eye-opener for them. If the diamonds were real, they would be worth a lot of money. Is this Mu Yichen's New Year's gift? Isn't it a little too extravagant? Mu Yichen was drooling uncontrollably. The Star was the world's top private yacht. This private yacht had only been launched 2 years ago after countless long construction periods. At that time, Gong Jia bought the ownership rights for £600 million. Everyone was curious about the luxury of the super luxury yacht, and there were even many media outlets who followed it in a bid to see the world's top luxury yacht with their own eyes. The yacht was 170 meters long and had a wide hull. It was like a huge white castle on the sea, which fully illustrated the ambition and boldness of the yacht's builder. However, the yacht was not as luxurious as it seemed on the surface. Why didn't he take a look at the person who had bought the yacht? Just a yacht like this naturally couldn't meet his requirements. After Gong Jia bought the yacht, he towed it back to his shipyard and remodeled it. He even equipped it with excellent defense equipment. After some meticulous remodeling, its power was comparable to that of a battleship on the sea. Not only was it equipped with intruder detection and anti-detection systems, but it was also equipped with Germany's top missile defense system and a laser shield. The yacht was equipped with 2 helipads, many small speedboats and supply boats, as well as its own submarine and submarine cabin. The submarine could dive into the water at a depth of 160 feet, and could enter the cabin directly from the bottom of the yacht. Hence, its owner could board the yacht without anyone noticing. Gong Jia also hired an 80-person crew. The extravagant spending made Mu Yichen dumbfounded. His eyes widened in disbelief. He often paid attention to the news about the Star, the world's most luxurious yacht. He had read about it before. He didn't expect the most luxurious yacht to be in his uncle's hands. Now, as a New Year's gift, his uncle actually gave him this yacht as a New Year's gift. Xiao Yichen was speechless. He narrowed his eyes faintly as the boy's drooling words echoed in his ears over and over again. Gong Jia is a super rich man, so rich that he's oozing with oil. His personal wealth was enough to buy many first-tier developed countries. He was very rich. Very rich. Rich, money. Xiao Yichen was dumbstruck as he held the keys to the yacht in his hands. It was as if a pie had fallen from the sky and hit him so hard that he was disoriented. It was said that the yacht had been bought for £600 million. Including the cost of the modifications and equipment in the later stages, it would not be difficult to double the price. Even if it was £1 billion, how much would it be in RMB? Xiao Yichen did some calculations in his mind. Chapter 22:12. Why? You don't like it? I like it, I like it. Xiao Yichen nodded profusely as though he was afraid that Gong Jia would regret it and take it back. He quickly hugged the gift in his arms and giggled. He no longer looked cold and aloof as he hugged Gong Jia's neck and rubbed his handsome face intimately. Thank you, uncle, for the New Year's gift. I like it very much. As long as you like it. But, uncle, don't regret it. Since you've given it to me, you can't take it back. Xiao Yichen said cautiously. Gong Jia's lips twitched. He couldn't help but pinch the little guy's cheeks and said unhappily, Do I look like such a petty person? You do. Gong Jia was speechless. He suddenly reached out to snatch the gift back. Since you're saying that uncle is petty, then give it back to me. No. Xiao Yichen quickly protected him and jumped down from his body. He ran toward Mu Yaja and climbed onto his body. He hugged Mu Yaja and complained, Daddy, you have to protect me. Don't let uncle take my gift away. Gong Jie's eyebrows twitched violently as he gritted his teeth. This rascal. He didn't know how to be grateful at all. Didn't he know that this yacht was very expensive? Giving this yacht to this rascal was like cutting off a piece of his heart. He gave it to him, but he didn't even say a word of thanks. He even complained to his father. He just wanted to hear him say, "Uncle is so generous." In the end, he said that he was petty. How could he not be angry? Mu Yaja facepalmed and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Xiao Yichen, your uncle has plenty of money. He doesn't care about this yacht. Don't guard against him like he's a thief, okay? Gong Jia was speechless. Thief? His brother-in-law wasn't cute at all. Why were his words so unpleasant? What did he mean by guarding against a thief? When Yu heard the commotion in the living room, half of her head popped out from the kitchen. When she saw Gong Jia sitting at the table with a gloomy face, she exclaimed in surprise, "Uncle Gong, you're here." As soon as Xiao Yichen saw Yu, he waved the yacht keys in his hand and flaunted, "Yu, look. Uncle gave me a luxurious yacht as a gift." Private luxury yacht, Yun Yecheng and Yun Yeho, while Xiang Yu and Yun Qinli were even more taken aback by this development. They were all curious as to what kind of gift Gong Jia had given the little guy. Mu Yichen was so excited that he was dancing with joy. In the end, when they heard that it was a luxury yacht, everyone except Mu Yaja was dumbfounded. Yacht? Yun Qinli found it hard to believe. How could he really give him a yacht? At most, it should be a one replica, right? Mu Yichen was such a young child. If he really gave him a luxurious yacht, it would be too extravagant. How rich did this person have to be so extravagant? Yun Yecheng, on the other hand, felt that Gong Jie's gift was too expensive. Regardless of whether the yacht was a replica or a real one, just the intricate diamond carvings on the keys were worth a fortune. Was such a gift not a little too expensive for a child? Yu shuddered when she heard that. Inwardly, she cursed Gong Jia for being so extravagant as to give Xiao Yichen a yacht. She immediately walked up to Gong Jia, spread her hands, and asked with a smile, "Uncle, have you prepared my New Year's gift?" Chapter 22:13. Gong Jia glanced at Yu, only to see that the little guy was looking at him with sparkling eyes, as though he was looking at a rich old man. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Gong Jia couldn't help but feel hurt. He clutched his chest and said sadly, "I prepared gifts for you, but I'm being called stingy." Yu, hurry up and comfort my hurt heart." Upon hearing this, Yu immediately walked over, climbed onto his lap, and sat on his lap. His tender little hand gently stroked his chest as he consoled him seriously, "Good boy, don't be angry, don't be angry. Uncle, don't stoop to his level. He hasn't seen the world, but I have. I know that you're rich and generous, so I won't call you stingy." Yu's gentle consolation didn't heal Gong Jia at all. Instead, he wanted to vomit blood even more. These two nephews weren't cute at all. Gong Jia said stiffly, "I didn't prepare a gift for you." "Why?" Yu bit his tender little lips in grievance. He pointed at Xiao Yichen and complained, "You gave him a luxurious yacht, but you didn't prepare a gift for me." Gong Jia gritted his teeth and grabbed his beautiful chin. He lowered his voice and said, "Little brat, the amount of money under your name isn't any less than mine. How dare you come here and suck my blood?" Yu's expression changed. He smiled slyly and pouted his pink lips. "Because you're my uncle. Why don't you call me grandpa and I'll give you a yacht?" Gong Jia was speechless. Yu continued, "You have to know that I won't obediently address anyone who comes here just because they're related to me by blood. Uncle, don't pretend to be obedient after getting such a good deal. If you don't prepare my gift today, he. This is my territory. Be careful, or I'll make things difficult for you. Pretending to be obedient after getting such a good deal?" Gong Jia was so angry that he almost choked. "I'll call you grandpa, and you'll give me the ancient castle that you bought from the auction. How about that?" "Sure, call me that if you dare." Gong Jia immediately called out, "Grandpa." Yu was speechless. The little kid's face turned green. He said fiercely, "How shameless." Gong Jia playfully stuck his tongue out. Then, he rubbed his head lovingly and smiled. "All right, I won't tease you anymore. I've also prepared a New Year's gift for my son." "What gift?" Gong Jia whispered into his ear. "Haven't you been eyeing Victoria Island, which I bought last year?" I'll give it to you." "Of course, you, of course, of course." Gong Jia hummed in response. "Are you touched? Uncle is so generous. I love you so much." Yu hugged his shoulders and cheered excitedly, beaming from ear to ear. Gong Jia said proudly, "Aren't you going to express your gratitude to Uncle?" Without hesitation, Yu lifted Gong Jia's chin with one hand. His tender little face slowly inched closer to his handsome face. Then, he gracefully kissed his thin lips and said, "Thank you." This was his way of expressing intimacy with Yun Shusher. It had become a habit. However, Gong Jia was shocked by this intimate kiss. He widened his eyes and touched his lips with his fingers. He was a little surprised. You're taking the opportunity to molest me," Gong Jia complained. Chapter 22:14. Gong Jia retorted coldly, "So, your way of thanking me is to steal my first kiss?" Tired face. Yu sucked in a breath of cold air. His eyes widened in shock as he stared at him in disbelief. Clearly, he was doubtful of his words. "So," Yu suddenly inched closer to him and said teasingly, "Uncle is still a pure and innocent little virgin?" T. Gong Jia's face turned red. He was so embarrassed that he looked like he was about to bleed. He said in all seriousness, "Uncle has been on the battlefield since he was young. I've been to many battles and have given pointers." T. Yu covered his mouth and snickered. "Giving pointers? Giving pointers to you?" Gong Jia was beyond embarrassed. He was in his 20s, yet he was being mocked by a 7-year-old boy. He couldn't take it lying down. Gong Jia glanced at Yu, who couldn't stop snickering, and said coldly, "Humph. I'm not going to stoop to your level." "Hee, stubborn." Yu mocked him. Suddenly, he thought of something and shook his head. "No wonder I sensed an ascetic aura from you the first time I saw you in person. It turns out that Uncle is so pure. Come, do you want me to teach you how to kiss? Go away." Gong Jia pushed him away in disdain. However, Yu seemed determined to tease him. He wrapped his arms around his neck and pouted, wanting to kiss his thin lips. "Little Jia, you're here." Yun Shusher's voice suddenly rang out. Yu stopped in his tracks. Both he and Gong Jia looked back and saw Yun Shusher standing at the kitchen door, smiling like a flower. "You're just in time. Dinner is about to be served." With that, Yun Shusher went back into the kitchen. Yu shot him a look. "Why aren't you helping Mommy?" Gong Jia replied with a then stood up and went to the kitchen. In the kitchen, Yun Shusher was seriously preparing the soup. She put in a spoonful of chicken essence and scooped up a mouthful of soup. She carefully blew on it and gently took a sip to taste it. Seeing this, Gong Jia's eyes could not help but curve into a gentle smile. Following that, he silently moved closer to her and suddenly reached out his hand to hug her waist from behind. He gently rested his chin on her shoulder. Yun Shusher was startled. She turned around and saw that it was Gong Jia. She heaved a sigh of relief and said angrily, "Shao Jia, why didn't you make a sound when you walked in? You're like a cat." "That's because big sister is too focused." Gong Jia glanced at her hand. "Are you making soup?" "Yes." "Do you want to try the pork rib soup?" Gong Jia nodded, looking very expectant. Just as Yun Shusher was about to start, Gong Jia suddenly reached out and held her hand. He took a small spoonful from the spoon in her hand and gently took a sip. Suddenly, his eyes lit up unexpectedly. "Not bad." "What do you mean not bad?" Yun Shusher protested. Hey. Aren't you underestimating me?" Is my cooking as bad as you think? I've never tried your cooking before. This is probably the first time, right? Yun Shishir was the most annoyed. What do you mean by the first time? I used to cook noodles for you when we were young. Gong Jia broke out in a cold sweat and said coldly, instant noodles count? Why doesn't instant noodles count? You don't even know how to cook instant noodles. Gong Jia was speechless. Please, that was because he was lazy. Gong Jia said again, give me a piece of pork rib to try. Chapter 22:15. Yun Shishir nodded and carefully picked up a piece of pork rib with her chopsticks. She carefully held it in her hands and blew on it gently, afraid that the pork rib would scald him. Be careful, it's hot. Gong Jia was envious and was about to take a bite out of it. Suddenly, a broad palm appeared out of nowhere and pushed him to the side. Before Yun Shishir could react, she saw a tall figure slowly approaching from the corner of her eye. Muyaja had entered the kitchen and pushed Gong Jia aside. He calmly held Yun Shishir's wrist and naturally put the pork rib into his mouth. Yun Shishir's lips twitched. Gong Jia came back to his senses and looked up. He saw Muyaja holding Yun Shishir's shoulders. His mouth was moving as he looked at him warily. When did he come in? Recalling the push just now, it must have been this fellow. Muyaja saw Gong Jia enter the kitchen and quickly followed him. When he reached the entrance of the kitchen, he saw a certain man openly holding his woman's waist and leaning his head on her shoulders. Although this man was his legitimate brother-in-law, he found this scene extremely annoying no matter how he looked at it. Hence, just when Yun Shishir was about to feed him the pork rib, Muyaja walked over and pushed Gong Jia away. He leaned forward and pulled Yun Shishir into his arms as if declaring his sovereignty. When Gong Jia saw this, he narrowed his eyes slightly and snorted coldly. Brother-in-law, what are you doing? Muyaja said righteously, I'm here to help. Help? Who would believe that? He obviously didn't want to see him being too intimate with his sister. Gong Jia gritted his teeth. This was the reason why he didn't want his sister to get married. Out of nowhere, another man appeared in his sister's world and fought with him for his sister's love. More importantly, this fight was perfectly justified. He had no room to refute. Gong Jia felt particularly unbalanced. He glanced at Muyaja, only to see him sizing him up as if he was looking at an invader. The two men glared at each other like tigers eyeing their prey. In the air, electric currents couldn't help but collide. Like electric sparks, they faced off in an invisible confrontation. Yun Shishir broke out in a cold sweat. She picked up 2 pieces of pork ribs with her chopsticks and stuffed them into each of their mouths. Then, she pushed the 2 of them out. Go back to your seats and sit down. Don't get in the way here. Madam, sister, bang. The kitchen door slammed shut. The 2 men were given the cold shoulder at the same time. They resentfully turned their faces and looked at each other in disgust. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen sat at the side, the corners of their lips twitching. Then, they looked at each other and gave each other a look. The 2 little fellows walked over and each of them hooked their arms around a man's arm. Xiao Yichen hooked her arm around Muyaja's arm and pushed him back to the table. She urged, Daddy, stop messing around. You're going to be a burden if you go to the kitchen to help. Be good and sit down. Yu Yu pulled Gong Jia to sit opposite Muyaja and reminded him, Uncle, be good and sit down. Dinner will be served soon. With that, the 2 little fellows hooked their arms around each other's shoulders and went into the kitchen to help. Chapter 22:16. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen served a sumptuous spread of delicacies to the table. Let's eat. The table was filled with laughter. Yun Shishir poured wine for Yun Yecheng and Yun Yeho. As for the mother-daughter pair, they behaved themselves and ate in silence. Yun Qinli was the tactful one. Occasionally, she would chime in with a few pleasing words and quickly immerse herself in the joyous atmosphere. Halfway through the drinking session, Gong Jia and Muyaja started a fight. The 2 men sat opposite each other and downed an entire bottle of white wine. Of course, Gong Jia was the first to start the fight. He first poured half a glass of white wine and raised a brow in Muyaja's direction. Then, he raised his wrist and offered a toast. That look was undoubtedly a blatant provocation. There was no reason for Muyaja not to accept his brother's toast. After all, he was the older one. Besides, how could he have stage fright when his brother-in-law offered a toast? Thus, the two men drank one glass after another and downed more than 2 caddies of white wine. The rest of the group was stunned by the sight. What was even more shocking was that the two did not show any signs of drunkenness even after downing 2 liters of wine. If it were Yun Yecheng and Yun Yeho, they would have long been so drunk that they would have collapsed on the table and lost consciousness by now. These 2 men, on the other hand, downed more than 2 caddies of white wine. 2 bottles of white wine were almost empty, and only then did Gong Jia and Muyaja seem to be in the mood to drink. What a joke. Gong Jia's alcohol tolerance over the years was not for nothing. He still remembered that time when he was trapped in a war zone with a group of mercenaries from Russia. Along the way, when he was tired or sleepy, he would drink some vodka to perk himself up. Those Russians were especially ruthless. Sometimes, when they ran out of vodka, they would go to the medical team to get some medical alcohol, mix it with water, and gulp it down. After many years of training, his alcohol tolerance was quite impressive. What about Muyaja? Naturally, he would not admit defeat. He had experienced many such situations since he was young, whether it was a dinner party or a drinking party. When he was very young, he started drinking alcohol. His alcohol tolerance was trained since he was young. First, he drank red wine. Slowly, he moved on to white wine, vodka, and many other strong liquors. Therefore, when he and Gong Jia were placed together, their alcohol tolerance was about the same. Neither of them was giving way to the other. Yu Yu watched from the side with a guilty conscience. These 2 guys didn't drink in small sips. They either didn't drink or drank it all in one go. Wasn't this combat power too terrifying? Could it be that this white wine was mixed with water? With this question in mind, Yu Yu curiously picked up the wine glass when Muyaja wasn't paying attention. She licked the white wine with her little tongue. She had only touched a drop when she suddenly choked on it. It was so spicy that she rolled her eyes and clicked her tongue for a long time. Her face instantly turned red from the spiciness. Ha ha ha. Yun Yecheng was amused and deliberately teased her. Yu Yu, does the wine taste good? Yun Yeho could not help but laugh. You're so young, yet you want to learn how to drink like an adult. You're really promising. It suddenly started snowing outside the window. The snowfall was a little sudden and rushed. In just a short while, a thin layer of snow had accumulated on the ground, trees, and roof. In just a short while, the snow had become much thicker. Chapter 22:17. As they walked past, they left a trail of footprints of varying depths. Shanty Walk was a retro castle-designed villa and bungalow. After the snow fell, it felt like a fairy tale world. Xiao Yichen pointed out the window excitedly and exclaimed, "Wow! It's snowing! It's snowing! We can have a snowball fight later." Yu Yu pretended to be reserved and ate quietly. Xiao Yichen suddenly tugged at his sleeve and encouraged him, "Yu Yu, let's play in the snow." "Humph, I don't want to play such a childish game with you," Yu Yu said proudly. However, even though he said that, he ate faster. Only God knew how much he looked forward to having a snowball fight. In the past, when it snowed in winter, Yun Shishir would not allow him to go out and play in the snow. After all, his body was weak. If he went out to play in the snow, he would catch a cold and catch a cold. With little Munchkin's physique, it would take at least half a month for him to recover. Moreover, it was boring to play in the snow alone. Even so, when it snowed, the little guy was still very excited. Hence, Yu Yu would sneak out behind Yun Shishir's back. Even if he hid in a corner and built a small snowman, he would still be satisfied. After the reunion dinner, Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen pestered Gong Jia to build a snowman outside the house. Dragging Gong Jia along was not enough. Yu insisted on bringing Mu Yaja along to have a snowball fight. Mu Yaja was silent. He sized up the two little guys who were eyeing him covetously. Who was the one who said not to play such a childish game like a snowball fight? Sensing Mu Yaja's teasing and playful gaze, Yu, who had just put on his gloves and hat, glanced at him. Then, he blushed and cleared his throat. In a serious tone, he said, Xiao Yichen wants to play. I'm just accompanying him. This seemingly perfect excuse was met with disdain from Gong Jia and Xiao Yichen. Xiao Yichen said in disdain, Yu, I think you want to have a snowball fight too. If you want to play, just say it. What do you mean by playing with me? Yu's face turned even redder. Shut up. Who said I wanted to play? Weren't you the one who kept encouraging me to have a snowball fight? Didn't I do it to accompany you? What a pretentious excuse. Xiao Yichen blurted out an idiom. You obviously want to play. Who said so? I'm just playing with you. It's you who wants to play. Just like that, the two little guys bickered and led Gong Jia and Mu Yaja out to play in the snow. Yun Shishir couldn't help but worry. Yu and Xiao Yichen knew their limits. Mu Yaja and Gong Jia wouldn't turn a simple snowball fight into a bloody war, would they? She couldn't help but shudder. Yun Yecheng and Yun Yeho were already half drunk. Yun Shishir helped them up to the guest room on the second floor to rest. When she went downstairs, she saw Xiang Yu standing at the staircase, looking at her uneasily as if she had something to say to her. Auntie, is something the matter? Sure, it's like this. Chapter 22:18. I don't have enough red packets for the children this year, but I'll definitely make up for it next year. Yun Shishir was stunned for a moment before her lips curled up. Red packets are just a way to express our sincerity and happiness. Don't take it to heart. I'm already very touched that you're so understanding. As she spoke, she suddenly sized her up cautiously and asked in a roundabout manner, Shishir, did your father buy this villa? Yun Shishir shook her head and smiled. My husband bought this villa. He originally planned to use it as our wedding home, but he said that it's too stingy to use it as a wedding home. Her nonchalant words set off waves of shock in Xiang Yu's heart. Yun Qinli and Yun Qingmiao, who were sitting at the side, also pricked up their ears to eavesdrop on the couple's conversation. When they heard Yun Shishir casually say that this villa was too stingy to use as a wedding home, they could not help but feel envious. This villa was small. It was more than 300 square meters in size, not including the 2 basement floors. With 4 floors and a small attic, there were a total of 8 rooms. It would not be a problem for 4 generations to live under the same roof. How could a newlywed's wedding home be called small? Wasn't her tone a little too arrogant? Yun Qingmiao could not help muttering secretly, what does this brother-in-law do for a living? Why is he so rich? To be able to hold such a grand wedding on a private island, brother-in-law must have a powerful background. Is there a need to ask? With so much money, this villa is nothing to him. Things that are valuable to us are as light as a feather in his eyes, said Yun Qinli. Yun Qingmiao's eyes turned redder as she bit her lower lip hard. Sometimes, some things were really unfair. It was really unfair. How much did Yun Qingmiao yearn for such a villa? It had 4 floors above ground and 2 basement floors, including the attic. It was a spacious villa with a garden, and the luxurious decor was unbelievably beautiful. Such a villa was located on a piece of land where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. If she wanted to own it, she would not be able to touch it even if she spent her entire life. Yun Shishir, on the other hand, had easily obtained all of this. Why? Wasn't it because she had married a rich husband? If brother-in-law wasn't so rich, with Yun Shishir's standard, how could she afford to live in such a high-end villa area? Yun Qinli was also very jealous. If she could stay in such a villa for a night, she would be very happy. She felt that the girl who lived in such a villa was like a high and mighty princess, elegant and arrogant. However, she could only imagine all of this. You think this villa is too small? Xiang Yu said enviously, this villa is already very big. You two are newlyweds, and it's already very spacious for you two to live together with your two children. There's no need to buy more, right? The new house has already been decided. Mu Yaja has already made arrangements. Before the wedding, they will probably move to the new house. New home? When Xiang Yu heard this, her eyes widened slightly. She asked curiously, has your new home been decided? Yes. Where? Cloudy Mountain Shuri. Cloudy Mountain Shuri. Yin Xingmiao suddenly stood up in agitation. Yin Qinli glanced at her and found her agitation abnormal. What's wrong? Chapter 22:19. Surprised, Xiang Yu asked, how did you know? Yin Xingmiao replied, because I know a celebrity who's staying there. I heard that she spent hundreds of millions to buy a mansion in Yunshan Shuri. Some reporters snuck into the villa and took a few shots. It's really beautiful. Hearing this, Xiang Yu was speechless. Yun Shishir curled her lips expressionlessly and said, Yunshan Shuri is a property that Yaja personally developed. Since this villa has a special meaning to him, we probably won't be moving after we move in. Yunshan Shuri was located on a mountain with excellent feng shui. The environment was elegant and charming, and the scenery was picturesque. Previously, the Mu group had spent a huge sum of money to pave a mountain road for ease of transportation. Now that the underground tunnel was about to be completed, it should be much more convenient to travel from the city. Xiang Yu pressed, what about the villa here? It's probably vacant for the time being. Vacant? Xiang Yu bit her lip regretfully and sighed. It's such a pity for such a beautiful villa. Actually, there was a hidden meaning in her words. She was hinting to Yun Shishir that it would be a pity for such a beautiful villa to be vacant and unoccupied. It was not for sale or rent. Since it was vacant, it was better for them to live in it. This way, they could save a sum of money on rent, right? However, Xiang Yu was tactful and could not say this out loud, lest she appear too thick-skinned. Hence, she could only beat around the bush and remind Yun Shishir to take the initiative to invite them to move into the villa. Yun Shishir was smart enough to understand what Xiang Yu meant, but she pretended not to understand and smiled. He has many properties under his name, and most of them are vacant. He might auction off a few of them in the future. Yin Qinli suddenly asked curiously, Sis Shishir, what does brother-in-law do for a living? He's also rich. With so many properties under his name and such a huge villa, his net worth should be hundreds of millions, right? Yin Shishir only smiled and turned around to clear the table. Xiang Yu glared at them. In front of Yun Shishir, she pretended to be exasperated and said, Qingmiao, Qinli, learn more. Don't just be envious of how happy Shishir is now. She also suffered a lot back then. Now that her life is better, it's all because she has a good eye for people and married such an outstanding person like your brother-in-law. So, when you guys are dating, keep your eyes open and find a good match. In the future, you can live a good life like Shishir. Yun Shishir's movements suddenly stiffened. On the surface, Xiang Yu's flattering words fell into her ears, but they were especially unpleasant. What she was implying was that the reason she could live such a good life was all because of men. But what made her uncomfortable was that she made it sound as if she had chosen to marry Mu Yaja because of his wealth. But in reality, no matter if it was poor, rich or poor, even if it was just a small house, she would be satisfied. The definition of home was not how big it was. Instead, it was home where she could see the person she loved and live in harmony and warmth. That was her ideal home. Yin Xingmiao and Yun Qinli were still saying enviously, Sis Shishir is so lucky to be able to meet such a perfect man like brother-in-law. Chapter 22:20. Yun Shishir turned around and smiled sweetly all of a sudden. I'm indeed very lucky. The man I love loves me back. This is a blessing that many people can only wish for. How can love alone be enough? Love is important, but material things are also indispensable. Yin Xingmiao said matter-of-factly. As the saying goes, all things are sad for a poor couple. When looking for a man, it's better to pick one with good qualities. Her mother chimed in. Sure, look, Qingmiao isn't young anymore. She's older than you. Your child is already 7 years old, but she's still single. Why don't you take a look and introduce a good man to us? Yun Qingmiao stomped her feet in embarrassment. Mom! What are you talking about? Despite her coquettish expression, she was actually looking forward to it. Putting everything else aside, just any one of Mu Yaja's circle of friends was a suitable candidate. If she could hook up with a man of noble status like Mu Yaja, she would not have to worry about food and clothing for the rest of her life. She would be able to live a life of luxury just like Yun Shishir. Yun Qingmiao's plan was shrewd and ruthless. Yun Shishir, however, merely smiled and said, "It's not difficult to find a man with good qualities. Yaja's friends are all very outstanding." That's pretty good. Her mother said excitedly. Sure, you have to help us. It'll be even better if you can matchmake him and introduce him. The point is. Yun Shishir suddenly hesitated. The point is? Yun Qingmiao and Xiang Yu stared at her nervously. Yun Shishir said venomously, "The point is that even if you like him, he might not like you." Yun Qingmiao was dealt a heavy blow. Her face turned ashen as she clenched her fists tightly and bit her lip indignantly. Xiang Yu asked awkwardly, Shishir, how can you say that? Yun Shishir raised her eyebrows but did not think much of it. She said, he doesn't like just any woman. First of all, she has to be good-looking, have big breasts, and have a perky butt. Second of all, she has to be cultured, have a high education, have a good family background, and have a good upbringing. Third of all, she has to be able to throw herself at him. Otherwise, why would someone as outstanding as him take a fancy to you? Xiang Yu was speechless for a while. Her face turned red because of Yun Shishir's words. She wanted to refute, but Yun Shishir continued, "It's not wishful thinking to have an excellent partner. However, if he wasn't outstanding enough and had such high standards, he had to be handsome, come from a good family, and be rich and powerful. Would such an outstanding man lack fans by his side? Could it be that he couldn't do it? This was not a fairy tale. Even if Cinderella married the prince in the end, it was because she was beautiful enough, gentle, and kind enough. Instead of racking her brains to climb up the social ladder, it's better to think about how to become an outstanding lady." With that, she smiled elegantly and enunciated each word clearly. "Qingmiao, don't be envious of anyone. Happiness doesn't come from nowhere. You have to fight for it yourself." With that, Yun Shishir slowly brought the bowls and chopsticks into the kitchen. Yun Qingmiao tried her best to maintain her composure, but her anger could not be quelled. Her chest heaved up and down. After a moment of silence, she lowered her voice and said, "Ridiculous. You married a rich man, yet you don't allow others to have such thoughts." Chapter 22-21. Yun Qingmiao, who was already upset, was instigated by Yun Qingli's words. With nowhere to vent her anger, she could not help raising her voice. Humph. Didn't she say that women should be independent? What about me, though? Didn't I rely on my brother-in-law to live such a good life? Would she be able to live in such a beautiful villa on her own? Can I have so many beautiful clothes to wear? Don't you rely on your man? Why are you indirectly mocking me for wanting to marry into a good family? Am I not worthy of marrying into a rich family? In the kitchen, Yun Shishir frowned when she vaguely heard Yun Qingmiao's disgruntled mutterings. The biggest conflict between women was jealousy. She was not angry at all, though. The only reason others were jealous of her was that she was outstanding and lucky enough. Moreover, Yun Qingmiao was right. Mu Yaja had indeed sacrificed a lot for her. Everything she had, including Yu, was a blessing bestowed upon her by this man. She was grateful and cherished it from the bottom of her heart. Perhaps, in the past, she felt a little ashamed of her inferiority when she stood in front of him. She worked hard to become more outstanding so that she could be worthy of him. However, that was only because of her pride. Now, she did not think so much. She believed that women should be independent, but that was before Mu Yaja existed. God created men and women, and there was no such thing as equality between men and women. Men had more innate advantages over women, be it in strength, ability, or responsibility. Women, on the other hand, were gentler and more delicate than men. The two were interdependent in the first place. Women should be independent, but if a man was outstanding and responsible enough, it was better for them to rely on and trust him with peace of mind. Women yearned for such reliance. Men, on the other hand, relied on such reliance. She smiled nonchalantly and turned on the tap to wash the dishes. Yun Xingmiao heard the sound of running water coming from the kitchen, and her emotions became more complicated. She clenched her fists tightly and pursed her lips in grievance. Her mother said, "What do you know? This is called a sense of superiority. Shusher's life is better now. She married a good husband, entered a rich family, and has a pair of adorable Xiaobao. This is a classic example of a mother relying on her children to rise in status, but I think she won't be able to enjoy such blessings for long. She's no different from those nouveau riches when she's so arrogant. Isn't she just a little lucky?" Yun Qinli added, "Poor us, we can only be envious. Mom, look, we're here to be bullied. She may seem low-key on the surface, but isn't she just flaunt in disguise? She's just saying that to show us how outstanding she is." Her mother Qinli. "Okay, don't let her hear you." Yun Xingmiao grumbled unhappily, "That's how it is." Qinli didn't say anything wrong. She even said something like, "Why would someone so outstanding like you? Why don't you take a look at yourself? Brother-in-law is so outstanding, why would he like her? Because she's Yun Shusher." Mu Yaja's cold voice was suddenly heard from the door. The mother-daughter trio jerked their heads up in shock, only to see Mu Yaja at the door. Chapter 22-22. Originally, the door was left ajar and was not closed at all. The two lads were having fun playing in the snow outside. Now that the snow was getting heavier, Gong Jia teamed up with the two lads to have a snowball fight. In the end, they were beaten by Xiao Yichen, whose fighting prowess was off the charts. Mu Yaja originally did not want to participate, but Yu Yu coquettishly asked him to join in the fun. He and Mu Yaja would be on the same team, while Xiao Yichen and Gong Jia would be on the same team. Gong Jia was satisfied with that and encouraged him to join in as well. Mu Yaja simply decided to come back to get a pair of gloves and join the battlefield. However, just as he reached the door, he heard the trio's discussion. His hearing was very sharp, so he immediately heard Yun Xingmiao's jealous mutterings. Thus, he stood at the door and coldly sized them up. He did not hide his disgust at all. The trio saw him standing at the door as if he had heard all their complaints about Yun Shusher. For a moment, they felt extremely embarrassed. Yun Xingmiao, in particular, stood up nervously and looked at him in trepidation. She shrunk her shoulders and blushed. "Brother-in-law, when did you come in?" She shrunk behind Xiang Yu's back, obviously feeling very guilty. She did not know how much of her words had been heard by this man, so she felt guilty. Mu Yaja coldly pursed his thin lips and then slowly took a few steps toward them. When he was about 3 to 4 meters away from them, he stopped and slowly walked out. "I don't like anyone talking about my wife behind her back, even if it's someone close to her. Gossiping like this is very annoying." These were not particularly harsh words, but coming from Mu Yaja's mouth, they were full of mockery and disgust. There was a faint murderous aura and an overbearing aura. Yun Xingmiao's body swayed a little, and she almost lost her balance. "You dote on my sister so much, don't spoil her. We shouldn't talk about her, but she was the one who, whether I dote on her or not, it's not up to you to stand here and criticize, right?" Mu Yaja curled his lips coldly and said in disgust, "You're not welcome here." Scram. "Brother-in-law, shut up." Mu Yaja's cold and indifferent eyes fell on them, his tone not allowing them to object. Feeling guilty, Yun Xingmiao swallowed the words that were about to rush out of her mouth. She took a deep breath and looked at the tightly shut kitchen door. She did not know where the courage came from, but it could be due to extreme jealousy or displeasure in some aspect, but she snapped, "Why should I? Wasn't this too unfair? What right did she have to put on such a high and mighty attitude, like a spoiled princess who was pampered in the palm of someone's hand? And we're just complaining. Is there no room for negotiation? Moreover, what did I say wrong? How was she outstanding? She gave birth to a child at the age of 18 and got pregnant before marriage. She's such a pair of broken shoes and doesn't know how to behave. What's there to be proud of? Smack. Muyaja's face was horrified as he raised his hand to slap her. He had never hit a woman before. In his opinion, men who hit women were scum. However, when Yunxingmiao vented her anger by saying those words, he almost could not control himself and subconsciously slapped her. Chapter 22-23. Muyaja abruptly took a step forward and grabbed her by the throat. His palm was so wide and big that it was almost perfect for him to choke her. Just a slight squeeze, and her face changed. Her face flushed red, and the veins on her forehead were faintly bulging. Let go. The man's strength was truly terrifying. It was as if he could break her throat in the next second if he exerted a little more force. Under his grip, a suffocating feeling that could destroy heaven and earth assaulted her. She felt as if she was a tiny ant, and no matter how hard she struggled, she could not break free from his grip. Help, she could feel that the man was exerting a lot of force, as if he wanted to strangle her to death. Xiang Yu was taken aback by this sudden turn of events. She was stunned for a few seconds before she came back to her senses. She hurriedly went up to Yun Qingmiao, trying to free her from the man's grasp. However, she seemed to have underestimated the strength of Muyaja's grip. She begged for mercy while trying to pry off his hand with her fingers, but the man's fingers were like steel nails that were tightly wrapped around her neck. No matter how hard she tried, they would not budge. Yin Qinli, too, panicked. She stood aside in shock, her face ashen like a wax statue. Let go. I beg you. You'll kill me. The kitchen door suddenly opened. Yin Shishir walked out. She was not surprised to see this scene. In fact, she was unusually calm. She watched in silence for a long time until Yun Qingmiao looked like she was about to faint. She then walked forward and held Muyaja's wrist, saying gently, "Don't be angry. Let go." Muyaja still refused to let go. "Be good." Yun Shishir tiptoed and gently pecked him on the cheek. Muyaja let go of his hand abruptly. Yun Qingmiao's body broke free from the restraint at once, and due to the inertia of gravity, she fell limply to the ground. She had just fallen to the ground, clutching her neck and coughing crazily. Her entire face was red all the way to her neck, and her eyes felt like they were about to pop out. Just as she was coughing non-stop, someone suddenly grabbed her neck again. She raised her head in a panic, only to meet Yun Shishir's cold eyes. Yun Shishir grabbed the woman's collar with one hand and lifted her up from the ground. She did not know where she got her strength from, but with one hand holding the woman, she used the other to give her a tight slap. Bang! A thunderous sound was heard. Yun Qingmiao was completely dumbfounded by the slap. Her eyes turned red and her lips trembled as she felt wronged. I've always been very courteous to you. Because you're half my family, I've taken good care of you. But I seem to have overestimated myself. If you treat a dog well, the dog will wag its tail and beg for mercy. But what about you? You're worse than a dog. Xiang Yu felt humiliated and called out in disappointment, Shishir. How can you say that? What do you mean you're worse than a dog? Isn't that so? Chapter 22-24. With that, Yun Shishir flung Yun Qingmiao away. Yun Qingmiao stumbled a few steps backward and bumped into Yun Qinli. Tears rolled down her cheeks. They thought that Yun Shishir was made of water and could be molded into any shape they wanted, but this was the first time they saw her angry. It was so scary. Why aren't you getting lost? Yun Shishir reminded her coldly. Yun Qingmiao's shoulders heaved a few times. In a fit of anger, she picked up her bag and ran out of the door. Qingmiao. Xiang Yu chased after her and shouted. She exchanged glances with Yun Qinli before carefully sizing up Muyaja. Feeling awkward, she could not care less and chased after her with Yun Qinli. Stop right there. Xiang Yu stopped abruptly and turned around. Yun Shishir said expressionlessly, I'm warning you, don't harass my family in the future, including Uncle Yeho. Also, keep your mouths shut when it comes to my matters. Otherwise, I won't be so nice. The house quieted down at once. Just as Yun Shishir turned around, the man grabbed her arm and pulled her into his embrace. Little thing, why are you so fierce all of a sudden? Mu Yaja was in a good mood as he ravaged her little face lovingly. When she flared up earlier, he unexpectedly found her adorable. It was rare to see her lose control like this. She was probably angry. Yun Shishir, as if coaxing a child, Mu Yaja gently stroked her hair and coaxed her. Don't be angry anymore. Be good, Yun Shishir broke out in a cold sweat and pushed him away abruptly. Hey, are you coaxing me like I'm a puppy? Yu Yu suddenly ran into the house and stood at the door. She asked suspiciously, Mommy, what happened just now? I saw the old witch and two little witches leave in a huff. Suddenly thinking of something, Yu Yu's face darkened. She asked suspiciously, did those three bad people bully Mommy? Yun Shishir's lips twitched. Feeling that the father and son were spoiling her like a child, she pushed Mu Yaja toward the door. All right. All right. The bad people have been chased away by Mommy. Be good and go have a snowball fight. Mommy, Yu suddenly looked at her father sympathetically and said kindly, if you want to have a snowball fight, at least give Daddy a pair of gloves, right? Yun Shishir's faces she stuck out her tongue. Mommy's right hand. She ran to the cloakroom and took out a pair of gloves. She walked out and put them on for him as she urged, all right, go now. Mommy's afraid of the cold, so I won't play with you. Daddy will play with you. With that, Yun Shishir added, we'll come back to make dumplings together later. Yu Yu glanced at Yun Shishir's nonchalant expression and felt reassured. She stuck her tongue out and said, all right, Mommy will prepare the filling for the dumplings first. We'll make dumplings together later. With that, he held Mu Yaja's hand impatiently and ran out of the house. Yun Shishir returned to the kitchen and put the clean dishes into the dishwasher. She took off her apron and walked to the balcony. Leaning against the window, she silently looked out at the courtyard. From her angle, she could observe the battle. Chapter 22-25. In the courtyard, the four of them were divided into two teams. Yu Yu and Mu Yaja were in one team, while Gong Jia and Xiao Yichen were in the other team. However, no matter how one looked at it, Xiao Yichen's team was more powerful. Gong Jia smiled sinisterly and shook Xiao Yichen's hand. Then, the uncle and nephew looked at the other team and said ruthlessly, you're finished. Be careful not to get destroyed by us. However, Yu Yu refused to admit defeat and said, Uncle, don't underestimate my and Daddy's fighting skills. Don't say ruthless words first. In the end, you'll be defeated by Daddy and me. Yun Shishir burst out laughing when she heard this. In a short while, Yu Yu and Mu Yaja worked together to build a trench and build a sturdy fortress with snow. It was undeniable that Yu Yu had a talent for snowball fights. When he was building the fortress, he even knew that snow alone was not sturdy enough. Hence, he found some discarded bricks from somewhere and built a small fortress. Then, he covered it with snow. Mu Yaja's eyes were wide open as he watched from the side. Yu Yu said disdainfully, Daddy, why are you standing there like a fool? Prepare the ammunition. Mu Yaja scoffed at his father's disdain. Then, he squatted at the side and quietly prepared the ammunition. Make the snowball bigger. Use your hands to squeeze it or it will fall apart. After Yu Yu finished building the fortress, he squatted on the ground and started to make the snowball. Then, he started to talk about the battle strategy. Later on, I'll be in charge of defense and producing the ammunition. You'll be in charge of the attack. Mu Yaja nodded obediently like an obedient soldier. As for Yu Yu, he had the aura of a commander who was in charge of a battle. Soon, the snowballs were ready. Yu Yu continued, don't be reserved when you have a snowball fight. Don't have the burden of being an idol. Attack them crazily until they kneel and beg for mercy. Mu Yaja imagined Gong Jie kneeling in front of him and begging for mercy. Suddenly, a strange smile appeared on his face. Okay, let's fight. Gong Jie hadn't finished building his fortress yet. Although Xiao Yichen was a fierce fighter, he was clumsy when it came to work behind the scenes. Compared to Yu Yu, who was the king of craftsmanship, what about Gong Jie? It wasn't any better. Yu Yu had already made the snowballs, but they had only built half of the fortress. While the uncle and nephew were still figuring out how to build the fortress to be strong enough, Mu Yaja and Yu Yu's first wave of attacks had already arrived. A solid snowball smashed into Gong Jie's head with a dong sound. Ouch! Gong Jie screamed and fell to the ground. Little Yichen was flabbergasted. Usually, when a snowball smashed into a person's body, it would scatter and turn into broken snow. However, Yu Yu and Mu Yaja had figured out that during a snowball fight, the snowball had to be squeezed tightly to remove the moisture from the snow. Mu Yaja had a lot of strength in his hands. A snowball was squeezed into an ice ball and smashed onto Gong Jie's head, but it didn't shatter. It was obvious how strong it was. Such a snowball would hurt the most when it hit a person's body. It was like a hard rock. Gong Jie held his head and got up from the ground. Mu Yaja threw 2 more snowballs at him. He seemed to be aiming accurately. All 3 snowballs hit Gong Jie's head without missing a target. Chapter 22-26. Gong Jie howled again as he suffered 3 consecutive critical hits and fell to the ground. Yu Yu laughed maniacally and said humiliatingly, "Uncle, you're a weakling." Yun Shishir couldn't hold it in anymore and laughed as well. Weakling? Gong Jie got up from the ground angrily. Perhaps he was too agitated, so he grabbed a ball of snow from Mu Yichen's unfinished fortress. He squeezed it slightly and threw it at Mu Yaja. Mu Yaja moved elegantly and dodged it nimbly. The snowball smashed onto Yu Yu's body and shattered immediately. It didn't hurt at all. Mu Yichen said pitifully, "Uncle, don't touch my fortress." Smack! Gong Jie hit his head in disappointment and said gloomily, "They're already at our door. Why are you still building a fortress? Let's start fighting." Xiao Yichen gave up on the fortress and stopped defending. He grabbed a snowball from the ground and threw it at Mu Yaja. The uncle and nephew sent snowballs flying at Mu Yaja one after another. The flames of war spread. Yu Yu went back to the fortress and started to make snowballs continuously. Then, he sent them to the battlefield continuously. He cheered for Mu Yaja loudly, "Daddy, go. Kill them." Mu Yaja went all out as he attacked the pair of uncle and nephew. Yu Yu's snowballs were of excellent quality. They had strong attack power and increased the critical hit attribute. Seeing this, Yun Shishir laughed so hard that her stomach hurt. How were those snowballs? They could be considered ice balls, right? Xiao Yichen and Gong Jie's fighting skills were top-notch, especially Gong Jie. After all, he was an adult and his skills were on par with Mu Yaja's. With Xiao Yichen's help, they were equivalent to half of Mu Yaja's fighting skills. The 2 of them cooperated well and attacked together. However, both of them were on the front line and lacked ammunition. The 2 of them were evenly matched. Yu Yu watched the battle and made snowballs at the same time. He was overjoyed. Yun Shishir couldn't help but feel sorry for Yu Yu. Then, she smiled in relief. Putting aside those annoying matters from just now that he had calmed down and watched the family of 4 make a mess in the courtyard, a kind of peaceful happiness arose spontaneously. Yu Yu hadn't played so happily in a long time, right? When he was a child, every time it snowed in winter, many children would run out of the house to have snowball fights. In the past, at this time, the little guy would lie on the window and watch with envy and yearning. However, because of his health, he was ordered to stay at home. Therefore, he could only envy. However, it was different now. With Gong Jie, Xiao Yichen, and Mu Yaja as his playmates, he probably wouldn't feel lonely this winter. In the courtyard, the smoke of gunpowder filled the air and the flames of war raged on. Gong Jia and Little Chen fought side by side in a ferocious battle. Muyaja, too, went all out. He was actually on par with the two of them alone. The four of them had a strong desire to win. Even though it was just a game, they gave it their all and didn't hold back at all. Xiao Yichen saw that his father couldn't win, so he quickly aimed at Yu Yu. Hence, he picked up a snowball and attacked Yu Yu. Chapter 22-27. Yun Shishir could not help feeling eager to give it a try. Just looking at it made her excited. Hence, she put on her gloves and scarf and sneaked into the yard. Without thinking, she joined Yu Yu's team. Yu Yu was excited when she saw her mommy. "Mommy, you're here too?" "Yeah. Mommy will play with you guys, okay?" "Okay." Gong Jia was competing with Muyaja. The two tall and burly men were fighting, so they didn't notice Yu Yu's team's reinforcements. Yun Shishir picked up a snowball and threw it at Gong Jia. The snowball hit Gong Jia's neck. As he wasn't wearing a scarf, the snowball entered his collar with a whoosh. The frozen snowball slid into his clothes and stuck close to Gong Jia's warm skin. Gong Jia was so cold that he almost jumped up. He turned around murderously and saw Yun Shishir smiling at him. She even beckoned him with her finger. "Bring it on. Sis. You're cheating." Gong Jia instantly complained aggrievedly. "It's not fair to have 3 people against 2. "Yeah. Mommy, you're biased. You're helping Yu Yu and not helping me." Little Chen wanted to cry but had no tears to shed. He pursed his lips, feeling extremely wronged. Yun Shishir couldn't bear to see this. She quickly shifted her center of gravity, picked up a snowball, and threw it at Muyaja. Muyaja had originally treated her as a teammate. He didn't expect that his backyard would be on fire and he would be ambushed by his own family. However, he didn't show any mercy. He picked up a snowball and chased after her. Yu Yu piled the snowballs together and joined the battle. However, because of Yun Shishir's participation in the team, the balance was completely destroyed. In the end, there were no clear teams. In the courtyard, Yun Shishir quickly switched sides and chased after Gong Jia with Yu Yu. Gong Jia couldn't bear to hit her. Hence, he threw snowballs at Muyaja with all his might. Muyaja, on the other hand, chased after Little Chen and threw snowballs at him. Xiao Yichen couldn't beat Muyaja, so he could only aim at Yu Yu. The group of people chased each other and fought each other until they were all in a mess. Snowballs were flying around in the air. Amidst the falling snowflakes, the sound of laughter was reverberating. It was incomparably joyful. "Uncle, don't run." "Ah." "Mommy, catch up." "Ah." "Wah wah. It's so cold. The snowballs are in my clothes." As Xiao Yichen ran, he suddenly tripped over the snowballs that Yu Yu had piled up. He fell face first onto the ground. Yu Yu, who was chasing after Xiao Yichen, couldn't stop in time. She tripped over Mu Yichen, who was lying on the ground, and fell onto Xiao Yichen like a human pyramid. Xiao Yichen instantly felt a weight on his body. He sank deeper into the thick snow. Yun Shishir laughed out loud when she saw this. Just as she laughed, Gong Jia threw a snowball at her. It flew directly into her wide-open mouth. Yun Shishir ate a mouthful of snow. Muyaja was furious when he saw this. "How dare you bully my wife?" He squatted down and quickly picked up 4 snowballs. Then, he threw them at Gong Jia's face. Gong Jia couldn't dodge in time. He was hit squarely and fell to the ground. Yun Shishir saw a good opportunity. She picked up a snowball and threw it at Gong Jia, who was lying on the ground. "Wah wah wah. Stop hitting me." Gong Jia begged for mercy. Chapter 22-28. However, how could Yun Shishir let him off the hook? She picked up a snowball and threw it at him. Even Muyaja couldn't stand it anymore. A snowball flew toward her. This time, it was Yun Shusher's turn to be on fire. She glared at Mu Yaja angrily. Then, the couple started fighting. Mu Yaja couldn't bear to be ruthless to her. He didn't dare to retaliate and ran away from her attacks. Xiao Yichen clapped and cheered when he saw that someone had finally stepped forward to teach his arrogant daddy a lesson. Gong Jia quickly got up from the ground and joined forces with Xiao Yichen. They picked up a snowball and chased after Mu Yaja while throwing it at him. The pitiful Mu Yaja was attacked by the three of them at the same time. Yu Yu got up and looked at the scene. He shook his head and sighed. His heart ached as he said, "Daddy is so pitiful." As soon as he finished speaking, he picked up a snowball and joined Yun Shusher in attacking Mu Yaja. This time, Mu Yaja's backyard was on fire. He was chased by the four of them. In the end, Mu Yaja didn't even have time to make a snowball. He grabbed the snow on the ground and attacked the four of them. However, he wasn't a god. No matter how powerful he was, he couldn't withstand the attacks of the four of them. Furthermore, the team had Gong Jia and Little Yichen, who were highly skilled fighters. Soon, he was defeated and fell to the ground under the four men's attacks. Ha ha ha. Xiao Yichen felt that he had vented his anger and clapped his hands. Mu Yaja stood up gloomily. Gong Jia rushed forward and wiped his face with a snowball. Ha 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 ha. After the snowball fight, the five of them returned to the house. Xiao Yichen complained that his hands were cold and wanted to quickly get a basin of hot water to soak his hands. Yun Shusher immediately stopped her. "You can't soak in hot water. If you soak in hot water after the snow is removed, you'll easily get frostbite. But my hand is a little cold," Xiao Yichen said pitifully. Yun Shusher squatted down in front of him and held his hand gently. She carefully rubbed his little hand and blew on it before rubbing it again. "Do you feel better now?" "Yes. I feel a little better." Yun Shusher smiled at him and continued to rub his hands. However, not long after, two pairs of hands suddenly stretched out in front of her. Yun Shusher looked up in surprise and saw Gong Jia and Yu Yu standing in front of her. Gong Jia beamed and said coquettishly, "Sis, my hands are cold too. Help me rub them too." He was jealous of Mu Yichen's special treatment and couldn't wait to receive Yun Shusher's gentle care. However, before Yun Shusher could say anything, another pair of large hands suddenly reached over and wrapped around his hands. Gong Jia's lips twitched violently. He turned around expressionlessly and saw Mu Yaja coldly grabbing his hands and rubbing them. "I'll rub them for you." "I don't want to." Gong Jia resentfully withdrew his hands with a look of disdain. "Ha ha ha, uncle despises daddy." Yu Yu laughed. After resting for a while, Yun Shusher brought the dumpling fillings and wrappers to the table and called out, "Let's make dumplings together." The highlight of New Year's Eve was the family sitting together and making dumplings together. Gong Jia and Mu Yaja also sat down and made dumplings together. However, the two men had never done any household chores and rarely had the chance to cook. How could they know how to make dumplings? They held up the dumpling wrappers and looked confused. Chapter 22-29. "Daddy, I'll teach you." Yu Yu spread open the dumpling wrapper and used her chopsticks to spread the filling in the center. Soon, a dumpling was formed. "Mommy, why must we eat dumplings during the New Year?" Yun Shusher explained, "This is called New Year's dumplings. Dumplings are like ingots and symbolize wealth. They are also round and symbolize family reunion. Moreover, the dumplings on New Year's Eve are filled with meat. The dumplings are full and symbolize prosperity, peace, and prosperity." Xiao Yichen nodded his head half-heartedly. "Oh. So there's such a saying." After Yun Shusher taught Xiao Yichen step by step, she turned around and saw Gong Jia staring at the dumpling wrapper with a bitter look on his face. It was obvious that he knew nothing about making dumplings. Mu Yaja, on the other hand, had finished making the dumplings under Yu Yu's guidance. However, the first dumpling could only be considered as a half-finished product as there was too much water and the dumpling wrapper broke. Yu Yu said in disdain, "Daddy, you're so stupid. Mu Yaja was instantly dealt a blow and said in shame, "Daddy has been made dumplings before. My first time making dumplings, but they look good." Yu did not give Mu Yaja a way out. Mu Yaja was thoroughly depressed. Yun Shishir sat beside Gong Jia and taught him step by step. Under her guidance, Gong Jia actually managed to make the dumplings well. Before they knew it, it was already 6 p.m. Yun Yicheng walked downstairs and saw that the dumplings were already made on the table. Yun Shishir and Yu were busy in the kitchen. Mu Yaja was in charge of assisting, while Gong Jia and Xiao Yichen were watching TV in the living room. There would be a spring festival gala on New Year's Eve. Although it was not time yet, it was already being previewed and replayed last year's gala. What about Xiang Yu and the other two? Yun Yicheng realized that the mother-daughter pair was no longer around, but after giving it some thought, he guessed that the three of them were tactful enough to return home. At 7:00 in the evening, the reunion dinner was ready. Yun Shishir stood at the door and looked around for a while. She waited bitterly for a long time, but there was still no sign of Hua Jin. Could it be that he had forgotten? She returned to the house in disappointment. Hua Jin took a taxi to Shangti Walk. According to the address sent by Yun Shishir, he found his way there. Standing at the door, through the floor-to-ceiling window, he could easily see the harmonious scene in the living room. The family of 6 sat around the table, laughing and chatting happily. It was a happy and harmonious atmosphere. He couldn't help but feel envious. Envy and yearning rose from the bottom of his heart. How many years had it been since he spent the new year with his family like this? As far as he knew, there was no concept of celebrating the new year. He was homeless, to begin with, so such a scene could only be an extravagant wish for him. Hua Jin walked to the door and reached out to press the doorbell, but just as he reached out, he realized that he did not have the courage to press the doorbell. He furrowed his brows and retracted his hand guiltily. He blew on his hand and rubbed it gently. Outside the house, heavy snow was swirling in the air. The snow was getting heavier and heavier. It was as if countless cotton balls were floating in the air. Hua Jin was wearing a coat and a scarf. The fluttering snow landed on his body and face. Standing in the snow for a long time, even his eyelashes were lightly covered with a thin layer of snow. With just a gentle blink, the snow fell from his eyelashes and was blown away by the wind. Chapter 22:30. He yearned for it but didn't dare to step in, as he felt like a foreigner with nowhere to return home. Hua Jin slowly took a step back and returned to the courtyard. Through the French windows, he stood there quietly for a long time, silently looking at the harmonious scene in the house. While he was envious, he also felt that he shouldn't disturb such a warm moment. He probably wouldn't be welcomed, right? He didn't dare to imagine that when he walked in, those pairs of doubtful, repulsive or conflicted gazes would be directed at him. Just the thought of it made him feel exceptionally uneasy and helpless, so it made him feel awkward and even more nervous. At the same time that his heart was uneasy and timid, there was also a kind of loneliness. Would such a warm light be lit for him? Because of this flustered state of mind, he ultimately didn't have the courage to step in. Turning around, like a deserter, he actually wanted to quickly escape from this place. Hua Jin had just turned around when a voice sounded from behind him. Hua Jin. Hua Jin's back view paused as he turned around in shock. But he saw Yun Shishir had unknowingly opened the door and was standing at the doorway, looking at him with a joyful and coquettish expression on her face. "Why are you only here now?" Hua Jin looked at her helplessly, not knowing what to say. He had actually arrived earlier, but with an inexplicable uneasy feeling, he paced back and forth outside the door for a long time, ultimately unable to muster up the courage to step in. Yun Shishir walked towards him and pulled his hand reproachfully. "You're here so late. Everyone's waiting for you and the hot dishes haven't been served yet. Quickly come in." Shishir. Before Hua Jin could express his opinion, Yun Shishir had already held his hand and walked into the house. Wait a minute." Hua Jin stood still with some apprehension, seeming to be a little uneasy. Yun Shishir turned around in astonishment, only to see his desolate expression which made one's heart ache as he stammered, "Everyone. Will everyone welcome me?" Yin Shishir was stabbed by his disappointed expression, and her heart ached. However, Hua Jin smiled awkwardly and said quietly, "I'm afraid I'll disturb you, Shishir." "How about, what are you talking about?" Yin Shishir tenderly held his hand and smiled charmingly. "Everyone is waiting for you." That one sentence touched his heart all of a sudden. Hua Jin's eyes widened in surprise as he looked at her in disbelief. "Really?" "Yes." Yin Shishir continued, "You're the only one left. After the New Year's Eve dinner, let's go to the riverside to set off fireworks. We've already made an appointment. You can't break it." Hua Jin's heart skipped a beat, and a warm current flowed into his heart without any warning. Yin Shishir didn't care about his concerns and led him into the house. Hua Jin didn't struggle or avoid her and allowed her to lead him into the living room. The heater was turned on in the spacious living room. When he was surrounded by the warm lights, his mind suddenly turned white. Looking at the people sitting around the table, he suddenly didn't know how to react. "Sorry to keep everyone waiting. Let me introduce you. This is my friend, Hua Jin." Xiao Yichen was the first to stand up when he saw him. Oh. Mommy said that a friend would be coming over tonight. Is that brother Hua Jin? I know him. The male lead of Lethal Beauty. Chapter 22:31. Yin Shishir had already told them beforehand that she would be having New Year's Eve dinner with an important friend tonight. Naturally, Mu Yaja recognized him. His lips curled into a smile to express his friendliness. Gong Jie did not say anything, but there was no repulsion on his face. Instead, he consciously emptied the seat beside him. Xiao Yichen, on the other hand, stood up, carried a stool, and placed it beside Gong Jie. He greeted, "Brother Hua Jin, have a seat. I'll get you a bowl and chopsticks." As he spoke, the little guy nimbly brought a bowl and chopsticks from the kitchen. Yin Shishir pushed Hua Jin to the table and sat down. Yin Yicheng sized him up, then smiled and said cheerfully, "Shishir, is this your friend who's acting with you?" "Yes. Dad, he used to be in the same production team as me and took good care of me. He's considered my senior." Yin Yicheng immediately said, "Aya, this young man is so handsome. He's prettier than the girls. Hello, thank you for taking care of our Shishir." After a few words of greeting, the atmosphere became harmonious. Hua Jin's blank mind was injected with a trace of vitality, and the uneasiness quickly dissipated. He greeted them one by one. His mouth was sweet, and he coaxed Yin Yicheng happily. Yin Shishir also sat down. As she picked up food for him, she rebuked, "I wanted you to come earlier so that we could make dumplings together." Hua Jin smiled and was about to explain. Mu Yaja suddenly turned to ask him, "Can you drink?" Hua Jin immediately replied reservedly, "Yes, I can drink a little." Mu Yaja immediately poured him a glass of dry red wine. Yin Shishir's eyes widened as she watched. She did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Hey, are you trying to get him drunk? He won't get drunk with this little bit of wine, right?" Mu Yaja said confidently. "He said that he would drink a little, which means that he still has some strength left. Besides, it's not that easy to get drunk with red wine." Hua Jin added, "Shishir, I can hold my liquor. Don't worry." Yin Shishir was relieved. Gong Jie suddenly complained, "Sister, why don't you care about me? Will brother-in-law make me drunk?" Yin Shishir glanced at the white wine glass in Gong Jie's hand. She chuckled and asked, "Aren't you good at drinking?" "I've already drunk 2 glasses. Brother-in-law's alcohol tolerance is really not for show. I feel that if I continue drinking like this, I'll be ruined by him." Mu Yaja snorted coldly. He picked up the white wine bottle and filled Gong Jie's glass to the brim. "Gong Jie," Mu Yaja said gently, "Brother-in-law, we're not going home until we're drunk tonight." Gong Jie immediately cried out in grievance, "Brother-in-law, you must be doing this on purpose. Are you trying to get me drunk and then leave me alone at home to set off fireworks without me?" This brat's brain is very bright. He had actually figured out his motive. Muyaja raised his eyebrows and seemed to be provoking him. Don't get drunk if you dare. Gong Jia was speechless. His eyebrows twitched and he was instantly inspired. Humph, humph, humph. I'd like to see who will be the one to fall tonight. With that said, the two of them picked up their wine glasses and started drinking again. The table was full of chatter and laughter. Hua Jin stared at this scene in a daze, and a warm smile involuntarily appeared on his lips. In his memory, his thoughts seemed to have been spent in his father's drunkenness and violence. Every new year, every family was happy and harmonious. Chapter 2232. Every New Year's Eve, his father's mood seemed to get worse. Every New Year's Eve, he would always come home drunk and drag him out of bed. Then, whether it was with a belt or a hanger, he would be beaten black and blue. B*****. B*****. Your mother is a B****tch, and so is your son. Your mother harmed me, and now you're doing the same to me, aren't you? Are you feeling smug seeing me like this? Are you happy? I'll beat you to death. I'll beat you to death, you little B*****. His father's roar seemed to be echoing in his ears. That hideous and distorted face seemed to still be in his mind. Hua Jin came back to his senses from his memories. When he looked up, the long-lost warmth enveloped him once more. He suddenly smiled and raised his wrist. Thank you for your hospitality. Let me toast everyone. Tonight, he was no longer as arrogant and domineering as he was on set. Instead, he was as humble and polite as a child, unbelievably well-behaved. Yun Shishir thought to herself, this is probably how he was in the beginning. He's innocent and pure without a trace of pretense. After the New Year's Eve dinner, Gong Jia was already a little tipsy, but he was only a little tipsy. It turned out that Muyaja's alcohol tolerance was better than his father's, but what surprised everyone the most was Hua Jin's alcohol tolerance. He drank quite a lot and, under Gong Jia's persuasion, drank a lot of alcohol for Gong Jia. He drank more than half a liter of white wine, but he had no reaction at all. Yun Shishir was shocked. This guy's alcohol tolerance is so good. Muyaja also drank more than half a liter of white wine, but he still had no reaction. It was as if that liter of white wine was just plain water. After the New Year's Eve dinner, the family went to the riverside to set off fireworks. Yun Yecheng, on the other hand, said that he would stay at home to take care of his brother. The weather outside was chilly. There was still some sunlight during the day, but at night, the wind was even colder. Yun Yeho's legs could not stand the cold and would often ache. Hence, he could not go out to set off fireworks, so Yun Yecheng stayed at home to take care of him. Yun Shishir did not insist. Hence, she drove the car full of people to the riverside. When the six of them arrived at the riverside, it was already 11:30 p.m. Many people had already come to the riverside. Many of them were preparing to set off fireworks, while some of them were just here to watch the fireworks. Every New Year's Eve, people would tacitly gather by the riverside because the city restricted fireworks and firecrackers. However, the control by the riverside was lax. Because it was near the riverside, there were no major hidden dangers and basically no one cared. Yun Shishir bought a lot of fireworks, including large artistic fireworks. Muyaja and Gong Jia set up the fireworks and waited for the countdown to the new year to pass. They would set off the fireworks at midnight. However, before that, of course, he needed to do some warming up. There were also many small fireworks for viewing and playing. Xiao Yichen, who had never set off fireworks on New Year's Eve, was so excited that he chased after Yun Shishir, shouting for fireworks. Yun Shishir gave him a fireworks stick. Xiao Yichen held it in his hand, but he was confused and did not know how to light it. Yu muttered, "Idiot, haven't you set off a fireworks stick before?" "No, I haven't." Xiao Yichen felt wronged. "This is my first time." Yun Shishir laughed and walked over to him. She stopped beside him and gently taught him, "Hold the end." "Yes, hold it like this." Don't point the end at yourself. Okay. Chapter 22:33. As she spoke, she carefully lit a match and aimed it at the fuse. Soon, with a sizzling sound, the fuse was ignited and sparks flew in all directions. Xiao Yichen excitedly held the end of the fireworks stick tightly. However, he was so nervous that he didn't dare to move, as if he was facing a formidable enemy. Soon, the fireworks lit up. Colorful fireworks shot out one by one, illuminating his tender face. Wow! It's so beautiful! Xiao Yichen exclaimed in shock and excitement. Soon, Yun Shishir also lit up a fireworks stick for Yu Yu. However, unlike Xiao Yichen, Yu Yu wasn't as nervous and helpless as Yu Yu was when he set off fireworks for the first time. He calmly held the fireworks stick and gently waved it in the air. The colorful fireworks danced in the night sky, forming a gorgeous streamline. It was beautiful and compelling. When Xiao Yichen saw that fireworks could be played like this, he excitedly imitated Yu Yu and waved it. The two little guys were overjoyed. Hua Jin was originally standing at the side and watching in a daze. Yun Shishir suddenly handed him a fireworks stick and smiled. Hua Jin, let's do it together. Okay. Hua Jin took the firecracker from her, and she lit it for him. The colorful fireworks lit up his smiling face in an instant. Hua Jin held the fireworks stick and waved it gently as he leaned against the river. Gong Jia and Mu Yaja also took out a more beautiful type of fireworks and set it off. Ha ha ha. Xiao Yichen quickly finished setting off the fireworks in his hand. When he turned around and saw the fireworks in Gong Jia's hand, he was extremely envious. Wow, wow, wow. The fireworks set off by Uncle are so beautiful. I want to set them off too. I want to set them off too. Gong Jia walked over and carried Xiao Yichen with one hand. He handed the fireworks in his hand to him. Here. Take it, you can play with it. Thank you, Uncle. Xiao Yichen beamed with joy and waved the fireworks stick in the air. After Yu Yu finished setting off the fireworks, Yun Shishir passed the fireworks in her hand to him to play with. Hua Jin stood at the side and watched as Yun Shishir hugged Yu Yu and set off the fireworks with a smile. He felt as though his heart had been cut open and was burning. It was at this moment that Hua Jin suddenly felt that Yun Shishir's world, be it her or her surroundings, was emitting an incomparably dazzling light. He desperately wanted, and longed, to enter his world. Even he didn't realize that Yun Shishir's every move was like a level 10 tornado. It was so powerful that it disturbed his mood. At that moment, he felt like a young boy who had just experienced love for the first time. His emotions were so high that it felt like a dam was about to burst. Hua Jin stared at Yun Shishir's back view in a daze. Unknowingly, tears streamed down his face. Yun Shishir glanced back and was about to ask Hua Jin to join her when she saw him standing silently behind her. Against the backdrop of the fireworks, there was a clear tear stain on his face. It was a ghastly sight. She was shocked. She put Yu Yu down and walked up to him. However, she saw Hua Jin staring at her in a daze. His large eyes were faintly moist. Hua Jin. You, what's wrong with you? Yun Shishir reached out and gently wiped away his tears. She was a little flustered as she asked, You. What's wrong with you? Why are you crying? Crying? Was he crying? Chapter 22:34. What's wrong? Yun Shishir felt even more helpless. Hua Jin immediately shook his head and explained, It's nothing. I'm fine, then, why are you crying? Hua Jin said dejectedly, I'm just, a little envious of him. Yun Shishir followed his line of sight and turned around, only to see the back of little Yichen and Yu Yu standing together. She was suddenly acutely aware of the actor's current state of mind and came to a realization. He was probably envious of Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen. Xiao Yichen and Yu Yu are so happy. I'm just a little envious of them. Hua Jin chuckled softly, but there was a hint of bitterness in his smile. Yun Shishir pursed her lips, turned around, and leaned against him. She silently watched Xiao Yichen and Yu Yu's carefree backs. For some reason, the two little guys started playing around again, chasing each other. Yu Yu chased after Xiao Yichen. Xiao Yichen cleverly hid behind Muyaja. The two little guys ran around Muyaja, chasing after each other. Muyaja couldn't stand it anymore. He reached out and carried Xiao Yichen, placing him on his shoulder. Taking advantage of Muyaja's height, Xiao Yichen smiled proudly and made a funny face at Yu Yu. Yu Yu was naturally indignant. He ran over and tugged at Gong Jie's sleeve. No one knew what he said, but Gong Jie lifted Yu Yu high above his head and made him sit on his shoulder. Yu Yu commanded Gong Jie as though he was a steed. Then, the two little guys continued to play around with each other. Xiao Yichen didn't hit Yu Yu too hard because he knew that he was strong. If he really hit Yu Yu would definitely cry. Hence, he went easy on him. However, Yu Yu didn't show any mercy. He hit Xiao Yichen so hard that he cried out in pain. Gong Jie laughed heartily and encouraged Yu Yu to bully Xiao Yichen. Muyaja couldn't stand it anymore. Seeing that his eldest son didn't live up to his expectations, he lifted Xiao Yichen and ran away. Carrying Yu Yu, Gong Jie chased after them. The four of them, 2 adults and 2 children, were in an uproar. Yun Shishir immediately said, "Hey! Don't mess around. Be careful not to fall." Hua Jin was so amused that he laughed. Suddenly, he said gently, "Shishir, do you know? I envy them for having such a gentle father and mother." Yun Shishir glanced at Hua Jin. Then, she silently looked at the messy scene. Suddenly, she laughed gently. "If I were Hua Jin's mother, I would definitely dote on Hua Jin a lot." Hua Jin was stunned for a moment. He turned his head in surprise and looked at her. At that moment, Yun Shishir was staring at Muyaja and Gong Jie, as well as the backs of the 2 little guys chasing each other. Her gaze was unbelievably gentle. This was probably the radiance of motherhood. Looking at her own child, her eyes were filled with tenderness. This tenderness could melt even the coldest heart. All of a sudden, Yun Shishir heard Hua Jin's desolate and envious voice. "I also wish that I was Shishir's child. I also wish that I was Shishir's child." Yun Shishir's heart ached at these helpless and disappointed words. She turned her head and suddenly reached out to gently hold Hua Jin's hand, holding it tightly. "Hua Jin, in the future, celebrate Chinese New Year's Eve with us. Just like today, we'll make dumplings, have Chinese New Year's Eve dinner together, and set off fireworks together, okay?" Chapter 2235. Hua Jin's smile had a special kind of charm. There was a special kind of enchanting mist in his eyes. Usually, Yun Shishir rarely saw him show much sincerity in his smile. In front of the camera, he smiled modestly and hypocritically. On the surface, he looked like a humble teenager. However, when the camera turned, in the blink of an eye, the contempt and boredom in the corner of his eyes made that smile look especially ironic. In the crew, his smile became arrogant and insufferably arrogant, like a little demon king, like a rebellious child. Whether it was the director, the actors, or even the extras, he seemed to be deliberately angering them. He spoke ill of them until they were sad, and then he showed an expression of success. But immediately, another kind of indescribable sense of loss and loneliness would appear in his eyes. This kind of loneliness, like an isolated child, tried to use the worst way to attract anyone's attention, to get other people's care and flattery, even if it was hypocritical. But at this moment, when Yun Shishir turned her head and looked at Hua Jin, she saw him looking at the night sky. His eyes were like hidden stars, bright and shining. This seemed to be his true appearance. Naive, innocent, and simple like a child who didn't know anything about the world. There was no longer a sharp edge on him, and he was so white that he was not stained with any dazzling colors. He said, "I also hope that I am Shishir's child." It sounded like a very normal thing to say. But from his tone, Yun Shishir could hear a bit of helplessness and yearning. This kind of helplessness and yearning made her heart ache inexplicably. She had never been a person who was overflowing with love. She hated those clichés and hypocrisy. But her love for Hua Jin, under Hua Jin's smiling gaze, the pain in her heart suddenly overflowed and overflowed. She couldn't help but hold his hand tightly. She just wanted to give him as much warmth as possible on such a cold night. A trace of insignificant warmth. Yun Shishir looked up at the sky. At this time, there were already people who couldn't hold back their excitement and lit up the fireworks in advance. She couldn't help but think of her childhood. She still remembered the first New Year she spent with the Yun family. She still remembered that Yun Yeching had specially bought a lot of fireworks to set off that year. Some of them were very expensive, easily costing a few hundred yuan. There were even some big and beautiful ones that cost a few thousand yuan. Ordinary families would not bear to set them off. Usually, only those who were slightly wealthier would buy them. At that time, the Yun family was still very wealthy, and Yun Yeching's career was at its peak. Hence, the fireworks he bought were the most beautiful ones. The New Year's Eve of more than 10 years ago was not like it was now. The streets and alleys were brimming with a strong festive atmosphere. Setting off fireworks was one of the most anticipated New Year's activities. The beauty and splendor of fireworks was the dream of many children. On New Year's Eve, Yun Na pestered Yun Yeching to set off fireworks. Alas, Yun Yeching insisted on releasing it on New Year's Eve. That night, Yun Na secretly moved a set of fireworks from home. She dragged Yun Shishir out and asked her to show it to her. Chapter 22:36. When she heard that, she nodded fearfully and took a match to light it. However, due to her lack of experience, the fuse was not completely lit and was blown out by the wind. Only a small part of the fuse was left. Yun Na scolded her and asked her to continue lighting it. Yun Shishir braced herself and went forward to take a look. Then, she tried to light it with a lighter in fear. However, the fireworks that suddenly shot up into the sky almost blew up her eyes. Because of this, it left a huge shadow in her heart. Since then, she only dared to set off simple fireworks, such as firework sticks and sparks. Thinking of this, Yun Shishir could not help but laugh. She suddenly asked, Hua Jin, did you set off fireworks when you were young? Yeah, I did. Hua Jin nodded and then said, however, I rarely had the chance to go out to play during the New Year. Most of the time, I could only lie on the balcony and watch other people set off fireworks. I'm still a little traumatized by fireworks. What's wrong? Because when I set off fireworks when I was young, it almost blew up my eyes. Yun Shishir paused and suddenly said half-jokingly, so, from then on, I didn't dare to set off large fireworks because I was afraid that it would blow up my eyes. Hua Jin suddenly turned his head and looked at her. He blinked and said, actually, setting off fireworks is not scary. Just be careful and it'll be fine. Yun Shishir did not know whether to laugh or cry. She said, even though that's what I think, I'm still scared. Hua Jin suddenly held her hand. Don't be scared. If you accidentally get blown up, you still have me. You? Yun Shishir did not understand the meaning behind his words. Hua Jin suddenly said seriously, yeah. If you can't see, I'll be your eyes. If she could not see, he would be her eyes. Yun Shishir was stunned for a moment. She widened her eyes slightly and then smiled gently. Okay, but there won't be such a day. At that time, Yun Shishir only took his words as a joke. However, after a long time, when she suddenly recalled that year's New Year's Eve and Hua Jin's serious promise, she couldn't help but sigh. It turned out that every word he said to her was sincere from the bottom of his heart. However, this was all in the future. 11:55 p.m. At this moment, countless citizens had gathered by the river. Many people gathered here to welcome the New Year's bell. Some brought the elderly and children with them in high spirits. Some brought young and loving couples. Their only purpose was to welcome the gorgeous fireworks at the moment the New Year's bell rang. Gong Jia raised his wrist and looked at his watch. As the countdown approached, his handsome face showed a bit of excitement and expectation. Sis. It's almost 12. When Xiao Yichen and Yu Yu heard this, they looked at each other and smiled. Both of them were jumping up and down excitedly. Yun Shishir smiled and said, "Who's going to be in charge of lighting the fireworks later?" "I rarely light fireworks, so I don't know much about it." Just as Gong Jia finished speaking, Xiao Yichen raised his hand enthusiastically. "I'll do it. I'll light it." However, Yu Yu said softly, "Hey, it's too dangerous. You're so clumsy. Be careful not to get hurt by the explosion." This reminder was a form of concern in disguise. Chapter 2237. It was just fireworks. He was not afraid of that. In fact, he was looking forward to lighting the fireworks himself. That was because lighting the fireworks himself and sending them into the night sky would give him a great sense of accomplishment. Moreover, it was just fireworks. He had even played with rocket launchers before, so to him, fireworks were nothing more than an interesting toy. It was not a problem at all. Yu Yu raised his eyebrows and suddenly realized that Mu Yichen was not comparable to those ordinary kids. He had seen his abilities and knew that he was crazy. Lighting fireworks was nothing to him. "All right, you're in charge of lighting the fireworks. We'll be in charge of watching." Yu Yu was relieved, but he still reminded him cautiously, "However, you still have to be careful. The power of the fireworks is not to be underestimated, okay?" "I know." Xiao Yichen was not grateful at all. He nagged, "Why are you acting like a busybody?" Yu Yu was unhappy when he heard that. He said coldly, "Humph. You don't know how to appreciate my kindness. If you hurt yourself later, don't cry for your parents. I won't feel bad for you." Then, Yu Yu ran proudly to Yun Shishir's side. He hugged Yun Shishir's arm and waited for the countdown to start. 11:59 p.m. The last minute. Suddenly, the townsfolk gathered by the riverside and started counting down in unison. 10, 9, 8, 7, Xiao Yichen shouted excitedly, "Daddy, it's time to light the fireworks." Mu Yaja leaned against the railing by the riverside. When he heard the commotion, his lips curled into a smile. He casually picked up a cigarette from his lips and walked over. He rubbed Xiao Yichen's head and passed him the cigarette. Xiao Yichen took the cigarette butt and chased him to the side. "Daddy, be careful." Mu Yaja walked to Yun Shishir's side. He reached out and gently hugged Yu Yu in his arms. His other hand gently hugged Yun Shishir's shoulder. 3, 2, 1, ba. Walala. At the moment when midnight arrived, countless fireworks rose into the sky, as if there was some kind of magical tacit understanding. In the dark night sky, dazzling sparks exploded one after another. Xiao Yichen covered his ears and ran back. Behind him, fireworks lit up half of the starry sky. More and more people gathered by the river. Xiao Yichen tiptoed and could not see clearly. Suddenly, a pair of hands reached out from behind. Gong Jia picked up Xiao Yichen and placed him on his shoulder, supporting him firmly with one hand. "Can you see it clearly now?" "Yes. I can see it clearly." Gong Jia smiled and then muttered unhappily, "Kid, you're quite heavy." Xiao Yichen, on the other hand, was sitting on his left shoulder with a clear conscience. She held his arm and excitedly watched the countless fireworks rising from the riverside. Ba ba ba. Yun Shishir was engrossed in watching the fireworks. Mu Yaja suddenly pulled her into his arms, nodded, and kissed her forehead affectionately. "Madam, Happy New Year." Yun Shishir's heart skipped a beat because of this sudden tenderness. She looked up and met Mu Yaja's gentle eyes. Her face blushed and her eyes revealed a seductive look. Yun Shishir responded with an but Mu Yaja suddenly lowered his head and kissed her lips uncontrollably. Chapter 2238. Yu Yu caught a glimpse of this intimate scene and blushed. She covered her eyes shyly and forced herself not to look. See no evil, hear no evil. Even though she kept telling herself not to look, the little fellow couldn't resist her curiosity. She secretly opened her fingers and peeked at this tender scene through her fingers. Xiao Yichen also caught a glimpse of this scene and suddenly tugged at Gong Jia's hair excitedly. Uncle, look. Gong Jia hissed in pain, but when he looked in the direction little Li Chen was pointing, he saw a heart-pounding scene. His handsome brows knitted together in a frown. He walked over unhappily. Just as Mu Yaja was about to kiss her again, Gong Jia boldly reached out and blocked their faces. Mu Yaja was caught off guard and a kiss landed on Gong Jia's palm. Ha ha ha. Yu burst into laughter when she saw this. Mu Yaja suddenly looked up and glared fiercely at Gong Jia. He said coldly, "What are you doing? Hey, we're in public. Why can't brother-in-law take note of his image?" Gong Jia mocked him with hostility. Humph. How dare he secretly kiss his sister when he wasn't paying attention? If the two of them were being intimate, they should at least avoid a sister con like him. Why don't you consider my feelings? Yun Shishir was so embarrassed that her neck turned red when she heard this. She turned her head away awkwardly, cleared her throat, and pretended that nothing had happened. What image? Mu Yaja said confidently, "I'm kissing my wife." It's none of your business. It was a simple sentence, but it left Gong Jia speechless. Yu laughed dauntlessly and almost fell off Mu Yaja's shoulder. Mu Yaja smacked him on the buttocks. Behave yourself. Xiao Yichen pouted and complained, "Daddy, that's not right. Shouldn't the first kiss of the new year be given to your precious son? If you give mommy a kiss, what about me? I want a kiss too." Mu Yaja's lips curled into a smile. All right. As he spoke, Mu Yaja suddenly leaned forward slightly and reached out his hand. His slender hand gently lifted Xiao Yichen's chin. He tilted his head slightly and gently kissed the corner of Xiao Yichen's lips. Boom. A loud sound rang out. Little Yichen's face was so red that it looked as if blood was about to drip from it. He had only said it casually, but this stupid daddy of his actually took it seriously. He even gave him such a kiss. His every move was bewitching and charming. He was even more bewitching than those male gods in idol dramas. Especially the smile in his eyes, it killed everything in an instant. Have you ever seen a father flirt with his son? Have you? Little Yichen let out a yelp as he jumped down from his uncle's lap. Covering his face with his hands, he ran away shyly. You're so annoying. Daddy is flirting with me. Mu Yaja was silent. Yun Shishir was so amused that she burst into laughter. She laughed so hard that tears almost came out of her eyes. Xiao Yichen was such a clown. Did the heavens send him here to make fun of her? Gong Jia felt even more indignant when he saw her laugh. He snorted coldly. Sister, you're so biased. You give brother-in-law a kiss and not me a kiss. You're not a child anymore, Yun Shishir said, feeling speechless. Gong Jia said coquettishly, "No, sister. To be fair, hurry up and kiss me." As he spoke, he closed his eyes and moved his fair face closer. He tapped his face with his finger and said, "Kiss here." Chapter 22:39. Yun Shishir's antennae twitched violently. However, in the next second, Mu Yaja turned Gong Jia's face and grabbed his chin. Then, he leaned over and gave him a peck on the cheek. When Gong Jia came back to his senses, he opened his eyes. When he saw the culprit in front of him, he instantly jumped up and rubbed his cheek in disgust. He said angrily, "What are you doing?" Mu Yaja smiled mischievously and said provocatively, "Brother-in-law, are you satisfied with this kiss?" Gong Jia flew into a rage out of humiliation and spat, "Pervert." Then, he threw a punch at his face. Mu Yaja dodged it nimbly and said scornfully, "Ha, you can't hit me." When Yu saw that Gong Jia was really angry, she quickly grabbed Mu Yaja's hand and ran away with her father. "Daddy, run. Uncle is going to beat you up. Pervert. Stop right there, don't run." Gong Jia waved his fist and chased after him. Behind him, Yun Shishir and Hua Jin were left in a mess. They stood there dumbfounded and only reacted after a while. They held their stomachs and laughed loudly. Ha ha ha. By the river, the fireworks set off the night scene, which was mesmerizing and beautiful. When they returned home after setting off the fireworks, it was already past 2 o'clock in the morning. Hua Jin originally wanted to go home early, but Yun Shishir said that they wanted to stay up for the New Year tonight, so they could stay up together. After returning home, the two little fellows were naturally exhausted after such a commotion. However, Gong Jia and Mu Yaja were still energetic. Even after messing around for a while, they still looked energetic. Thus, Yun Shishir was dragged by the two men to play cards. Hua Jin naturally joined them. After a few rounds of warm-ups, they had a good grasp of each other's abilities. Of course, some of them still held back. Xiao Yichen was already asleep, but when Yu lay on the bed, she was wide awake and couldn't sleep. She heard the noise in the living room and walked out curiously. When she saw that they were playing Fight the Landlord, she wanted to join them. However, how could 5 people play Fight the Landlord? Hua Jin suddenly said, "Fight the landlord with 5 people. Fight the landlord." The rules were that after the cards were dealt, the landlord who had a card would play a card suit and draw a card. There were 2 decks of cards of each suit. On the other hand, the dark landlord, who had another suit, remained calm and collected. After confirming the identities of his teammates, he hid himself as a farmer and played the games silently, secretly helping the landlord's side to win. After sizing up everyone, the other 4 expressed that they did not have any objections, and, the loser. If there's no punishment, it's a little boring. This time, it was Yun Shishir's turn to frown. "How about we don't have to pay? It's the New Year and I'm broke. I can't afford to lose." The 4 of them looked at her with disdain. Yu was speechless. "Mommy, why do you sound like you're sure that you'll lose?" "Because I feel like we're not evenly matched. No matter how I look at it, the 4 of you look like seasoned casinos. I'm a newbie. If we really have to pay, I'll go bankrupt." Hua Jin, Mu Yaja, Gong Jia, and Yu were confused. "Seasoned casinos?" Yu comforted her, "It's okay. I'm worse. I'll be your scapegoat." Chapter 2240. Gong Jia suddenly said evilly, "The loser will have to carry Yu once." Yu was unjustly implicated. He was unhappy and threw his cards. "Hey! Uncle, are you punishing the loser or me?" Smiley face angle, Gong Jia whistled. "Then the loser will have to take off his clothes." Mu Yaja looked at him coldly. "Okay. What was there to be embarrassed about? Anyway, the heater was on in the living room." Yu was speechless. "Anyway, other than Mommy, everyone here is a man. Daddy is not embarrassed." Gong Jia smiled sinisterly. "It's not that simple. After taking off your clothes, you have to run naked outside the door." Everyone was silent. How much hatred! That was too cruel. Outside the window, it started to snow again. It was extremely cold. Mu Yaja threw his cards directly at his face. "Since you like to run naked so much, do it yourself." Gong Jia was speechless. Hua Jin burst out laughing. Gong Jia suddenly looked over with a cold gaze. Everyone suddenly felt a gust of icy wind from Siberia. It was bone-chilling. Gong Jia suddenly said, "How about this? Whoever loses will jump down from the 2nd floor of the villa." Yun Shishir flicked his forehead. "It's just a game of cards. Do you want to risk your life?" Hua Jin suddenly felt that this man was very scary. Gong Jia was hit by Yun Shishir and said sadly, "This is how we play cards." Yun Shishir said, "You're not human. We don't want to compete with you." Gong Jia said, "Sister, we came from the same womb. I'm not human. Are you a genetic mutant?" Yu laughed loudly. "That's right, Mommy. At least I came from your womb. If you're a genetic mutant, then what am I?" Yun Shishir complained, "Both of you are not human." Yu was speechless. Gong Jia said, "Personal attacks are prohibited." Hua Jin suddenly suggested, how about a dare? When the four of them heard this, they had no objections. The first round began. Gong Jie shuffled the cards smoothly and skillfully. It was obvious that he had been in the casino before. Yun Shishir was surprised to find that her younger brother, who couldn't even play cards properly when he was young, had learned to play cards very well after traveling abroad for more than 10 years. His action of cutting the cards was clean and neat. It seemed that he had practiced it before. There was a landlord in the light and a landlord in the dark. The open landlord who got the landlord card chose a pair of the same suit and called the dark landlord. The dark landlord hid among the other four people and secretly cooperated, which was the so-called traitor, and cooperated with the open landlord to achieve the final victory. In the first round, the landlord fell to Gong Jie. Gong Jie proudly called out, "Hidden landlord." Out of the corner of his eye, he sized up the other four people's expressions. All of them were veteran actors, and their expressions did not change at all. Gong Jie's cards were very good. Soon, there was only a single card left. The other four people were eyeing him covetously. As the next player, Yun Shishir sealed her cards tightly. However, the most interesting thing about the open landlord card and the dark landlord card was that other than the open landlord card, the other four people did not know who the open landlord card was. Yun Shishir was about to win, but Hua Jin, this pig of a teammate, made her stay at home. Seeing that there were no more cards left, the open landlord card appeared. The open landlord card quickly appeared. Yu, who was at the top of the Gong Jie card, played a trump card and secretly played Gong Jie's card. The open landlord card won the game. Yun Shishir was speechless.